Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August 17th meeting of the Ann Arbor City Council. If you're able, please rise and join us for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag, of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Would our clerk please call the roll of council?
Councilmember Hayner,
Here.
Councilmember Bannister,
Here.
Councilmember Griswold,
Here.
Councilmember Lum,
Here.
Councilmember Grand,
Here.
Councilmember Ackerman,
Here.
Mayor Taylor,
Here.
Councilmember Eaton,
Here.
Councilmember Nelson,
Here.
Councilmember Smith,
Present.
Councilmember Ramlawi.
Here.
We have a quorum.
May I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda? Moved by Councilmember Amlawi, seconded by Councilmember Grand. Discussion of the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The agenda is approved. Do we have communications today from our city administrator?
I told Jennifer Hall from the Housing Commission that I will highlight something in her minutes. They passed a resolution in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. It's item in their minutes in G8.
Thank you. We have today an introduction from the University of Michigan with respect to their plans for students' return to Ann Arbor. Mr. Reen, you have the con. Or will shortly, I trust.
I'm moving Ms. Jones and Mr. Rain over from the university.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and Interim City Administrator Tom Crawford. Mike Rain, Director of Community Relations with the City of Ann Arbor, the University of Michigan. I've been meeting so often with the City of Ann Arbor officials, it seems like it. But Juan, thank you very much for your time this evening. We really appreciate this opportunity to provide you with an overview of some of our planning initiatives associated with, just started my video. Some of our planning initiatives associated with the fall semester. Joining me tonight and providing a bulk of the presentation, we're both available for questions, is Laura Blake Jones. Laura is our Dean of Students at the U of M. Part of her responsibilities include overseeing fraternity and sorority life, student legal services, the Beyond the Diag program, and direct relationship with our central student government. Most importantly, for this evening's purposes, Laura is on the front lines of the university's preparation and planning for the fall semester. And so she has prepared a presentation for your consideration this evening. And as time allows, because I know you've gotten a healthy agenda, we're available to answer questions. So Laura, if you could take over.
Thank you, Mike. Mr. Mayor, City Administrator, Chief Cox, council members, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here tonight. I do have a slideshow that was sent in advance, and I believe someone is going to share screen. And I'm going to move quickly through this content, allowing time at the end for any questions that you may have. And beginning in terms of an introduction, I want to share that it is a real pleasure to be able to be here to talk about a collaboration that has been active for many, many years, but particularly since March. The work that we've been doing alongside our colleagues in the city has been tremendous. While the novel coronavirus is novel, our framing and approach to the work is grounded in long-standing practice in terms of public health education and practices that are research informed, student-centered, and are done via a collaborative approach. And so none of that is new to us, and we have really relied upon all of that as we've constructed our plans for fall. Students have been engaged in each and every step of this process, and they have been at the heart of our efforts. Collective impact theory tells us that when you're tackling a thorny issue or a collective societal problem, that the only hope you really have in changing culture and being successful is through collective and collaborative efforts, working towards common goals and with mutually reinforcing activities. And I believe the information I'm about to share with you and the partnership that we have reflects all of that. I'm kind of pausing in this introduction, waiting for the slides to come up. Have you been able to share them?
Actually, I was told by Ms. Higgins that you would be sharing the slides, but if I'm working, if you need us to have staff do that.
Okay, if you could do that, that would be great. I don't have them up on my screen right now because they were sent.
Okay, give us just a minute. We were told that you guys would handle that.
No worries, thank you. I can definitely jump in, and I'm covering the first couple slides as we talk, so we're not losing time. So there has been two pillars to our approach in doing this work. The first is a grounding in proactive prevention education, and the second is a commitment to joint accountability and creating an infrastructure for accountability that will allow us to be successful. When I mentioned the collaboration with our students, we began back in March to identify and plan, and then they authored the Michigan Culture of Care Community Pledge. The pledge went through many iterations, also had faculty and staff input, but ultimately was adopted on campus and approved for use across the campus, not just with students. And an additional part of the partnership that I want to highlight this evening is also the collaborative media approach to prevention education that we have done on campus, and then in a joint effort with the city. I know your ad campaigns and photographs were being taken last week, I believe on Thursday and Friday. So the slides I have don't reflect your recent photographs and the applicability in the city yet. But when you get to see these pieces, you can see how student-centered and focused we have been. We've framed the work around what's your reason, taking the accountability and the commitment to want to engage in the pledge at a personal level, because we know, again, by looking at what the research tells us will be effective, that it's going to take that personal engagement on the part of all community members and work with our students to have them be other-centered, not thinking about personally what they might like to do in a given situation, but about the impact of their behavior on other people. So in terms of accountability, we had to approach this on campus on 3 different levels. We first, in terms of groups, went to our student organization accountability structures and crafted new addendums to our normal policies, covering things like compliance with face coverings, groups not traveling, managing size of activity, social distancing. All of the public health related concerns were crafted into new pieces of accountability within those processes. On the individual level, we worked with our Statement of Student Rights and Responsibilities, which is the grounding document that governs student behavior, and have authored by students, approved by faculty, and then implemented now by the president's acceptance of this, a time-limited addendum that again addresses public health related behaviors that we need to have everyone aligned with this fall. And then finally, in the residence halls, we made a clause, thank you so much. We evoked a clause in the contract covering behaviors in the residence halls. I'm going to have you advance to the next slide, and you'll see as we advance how I've covered several of these. So this is the framework for the work that we've done. You can go to the next slide. This is the culture of care that was crafted by students and has been adopted by the campus community. You can go to the next slide. This is examples of the ad campaigns. These are ads done by our faculty and staff. And when I mentioned that those of you in the city had been taking similar photographs, that's for your What's Your Reason campaign and that you'll be able to use. You can go to the next slide. These are the student ads, again, that focus on students talking about their why, their reason, whether it is they want a campus experience as a senior that will allow them to stay on campus and be here for graduation in the spring, whether it is thinking about family members and others who they are concerned about spreading the virus to, or whether it's just thinking collectively about our community. You can go to the next slide. This is an example of a stadium marquee piece, again, talking about this student's reason. You can go to the next slide. So the accountability measures I just overviewed at the group, individual, and residence hall levels are featured here on this slide, and you can go to the next one. So the Wolverine Culture of Care we have several strategies on this slide and the next one that talk about what else do we need to do. So we need to continue our essential partnerships with DPSS, UMPD, and AAPD at the city, county, and state levels. We've been in conversations with the county and the governor's staff in every other week meetings. And we've continued coordination and outreach work with landlords or property owners in the Ann Arbor area, our area neighborhood associations, our merchants associations. We've embarked on additional education. We're requiring all students, new and returning, this week. Tomorrow, I believe the invitations will be going out that students need to complete an online module that's going to talk about basic information about public health practices, as well as this information about the Wolverine culture of care and the role we need everyone to play. And at the end of that module, we're going to be asking students to voluntarily provide their name, off-campus address, and cell phone number for our use in being proactive about responding to reported concerns that then would not have to involve police involvement. I'm going to say a whole lot more about this in just a minute. You can go to the next slide. I'm also working with the deans and associate deans in the schools and colleges to message our student leaders, thanking them first for the leadership they've already engaged in and challenging them to continue this work. And then the centerpiece of what we're talking about tonight is the Wolverine Culture of Care Ambassador Program that will be operating both on campus and off campus in the near campus area. You can go to the next slide. So the details of this program, I'm going to hit at a pretty high level tonight, but the off-campus work will include 4 canvassing teams at a time of 2 to 3 individuals that will be a student, staff, faculty, or other volunteers, and then a community engagement officer, either from the Division of Public Safety and Security, UMPD, or AAPD. The shifts will be from noon until midnight, and at the beginning this Thursday, for 10 days from the 20th until the 30th, they will be 7 days a week. We're doing this at this time because of Welcome Week and the tradition of students being back early and this being a time for social gatherings to commonly occur. And then after we get past the Labor Day weekend, we'll move to just a schedule of Thursday at noon to midnight, Friday and Saturday at those times. And we're planned for this to be in operation through November 21st. But depending on our experience, the weather, a variety of factors, we will recalibrate those days or this approach as needed. You can go to the next slide. This is just a graphic of the ambassador shirts that they'll be wearing, the masks that they'll be wearing, and the buttons that we'll be distributing, so that the ambassadors' presence and the message that they send about taking care of maize and blue will be prominently displayed as they're walking around the near campus areas around the campus property. You can go to the next slide. So I mentioned already this opt-in address registry. The reason for this is students typically do not go in every year and update their data in our database. So if we would be responding to a situation at an address, if students have not voluntarily provided this, If it's not a group living house that we're aware of that's affiliated with a student organization, we wouldn't necessarily know based on an address how to proactively intervene. So we're asking students for this assistance. We don't know how many students, but we will have a finger on that pulse this week as the course rolls out tomorrow and we see the response rate. You can go to the next slide. Then how the operations center and concerns will be called in and we will operate is explained here. We will have a designated staff member sitting in the emergency operations center, equipped with that database of addresses that students have reported to us to answer phone calls that come there. They will then be able to either call or text a student if we have a name for that address and let them know that a concern has been lodged and that based on pre-scripted messages for what the type of situation that's reported, how they could work to bring that situation under control and prevent the need for a police response. Similarly, the dispatch center, after hours when we won't be working from 12 to midnight, the line will roll to the dispatch center so that calls will still be responded to in a similar way, but the staffing will not be in place outside of those hours. If mistakenly someone calls and they really need an emergency response, they also would be redirected to the dispatch center. And if we get a call that comes in about a concern at an address that we do not have a contact with, the ambassadors who are walking in that area can be sent there. And again, it is hoped that their sheer presence and reminders that their presence would provide might change behaviors. And of course, the community engagement liaison that will also be part of those teams can make a judgment call about involving law enforcement directly. And we're not intending to send ambassadors directly into large parties or situations where there could be personal risk. You can go to the next slide. I wanted to mention today how community members can be involved because I do believe in this partnership, and as we work in partnership, that there's a whole lot of ways that folks can be involved, and these 6 bullet points may not touch on all of them. But first, all of us serving as a positive role model for public health informed behaviors in our community, having the skill set to be comfortable making those kind reminders about face covering, social distancing, or gathering size limitations. Anyone can take the training modules that we're going to have available on our website, and there are bystander intervention skills training, de-escalation skills training, and really valuable information if folks want to do the kind reminding but are a little nervous about that. We have provided a toolkit for businesses and organizations. I'll show a slide on that in just a minute. And of course, we want community members to report concerns that they might have to the COVID concerns reporting line that I've just talked about. And finally, there will be a call out to the community for others to be involved in the ambassador program if community members are interested. When we've run a similar program before for night games in the past, we had lots of engagement from community members, and we're really welcoming that again this time. You can go to the next slide. So this is the example of the toolkit template that's been put together for others in the community to use, whether that's a business or an organization. You can go to the next slide. This is next slide is an example of the exterior signage that is very similar to the exterior signage, the seamless look to our communications in the city and on campus. You can go to the next slide. And these next few slides I'm just going to go through very quickly are additional shots of the work that we're doing. So this is the laptop sticker. You can go to the next slide. The bus signs, the messaging that will be on the buses. The next slide. Our diag boards. The next slide. Additional diag boards. That one on the left features our new Vice President for Student Life. That's okay. The next slide shows banners. The next slide is thank you and opening this up for questions and comments or concerns. Or Mike, if you have anything to add, feel free to jump on in here.
Yeah, no, the only thing I would add, Laura, is that we have been talking to the merchants associations. We have been talking to the business advocacy groups, whether that's the Chamber or Spark or Destination Ann Arbor. And we also have been talking to the landlords and apartment owners in the community and trying to keep them as up to date as possible with our developing plans. And they really are developing. Laura touched on a number of issues. We were implementing and continuing to look at different protocols and procedures. And so our Maze and Blueprint website is really the best thing for the council and the community to keep tabs of what we're doing on a daily basis as we draw nearer to campus. As Laura mentioned, the students are going to be starting to move in soon, but our plans and preparations are ongoing. So I would encourage everyone to keep an eye on the Maze and Blueprint website for the latest developments.
Excellent, thank you. Let's we've got 4 council members with questions. Let's roll with these, please. Trying to end, if we can, by 7:30. So questions fast, answers faster, please. Councilmember Ackerman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Jones and Mr. Rand, for being here. It's good to see you both. I think we've all been kind of alarmed by the events happening in Chapel Hill. It's a like university that's seeing quick outbreaks happening in dorms. As we get more information about what's happening at other large state schools, how will our plans adjust to respond accordingly? Also, a second question, if I could. You make a nod to testing early in the presentation, but Dr. Slissel made some comments that made it seem as though testing would not be a priority of the university. Can you also clarify testing processes and procedures?
Absolutely. And in the spirit of quick questions and answers, I'll try to move quickly. So the pre-arrival testing that we are doing is with our residence hall population. And I'm not aware what UNC Chapel Hill did in terms of pre-arrival testing in their residence halls or not, but it's our hope that students who might test positive pre-arrival will stay home and wait to arrive on campus when they're directed to do so by their physician. We're hoping that that will help. And we also have plans that are, one of the things that families and students have most wanted to be reassured about is our capacity for symptomatic testing. And we are feeling very confident about that. We've been operating all summer. We know that we have the capacity between the University Health Service, Michigan Medicine, St. Joe's, other places where people get their health care. Those symptomatic testing processes are working very well and pretty timely. We also are still continuing to develop what our ongoing surveillance testing is going to be. The committee working on that is hoping to finalize that very soon. And I believe the president's going to be making additional information available about the comprehensive nature of testing. So hopefully that addresses some of your questions.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. I'm most interested in your COVID concerns reporting line, and I'm curious how strongly you would recommend us sharing that with our constituents. I guess some of the neighborhoods are a mix of student rentals and residents, or non-students, I should say, non-student residents and student residents. And we anecdotally, we have heard a lot of concerns of residents who notice students who stayed over the summer and are like having parties and things. How would you recommend that we explain the COVID concerns reporting line to just residents who might in passing observe something on campus that they think isn't quite right?
Yeah, so we are working on finalizing what the phone number is going to be for the COVID concerns reporting line, and then we are going to be actively promoting it. We would want you to do the same with your constituents. We'll share it with you. I had hoped I would have it today and be able to like put it in the slide what the actual number is. We're trying to get an easy to remember or a number that's correlated to UM Cares, but that's proved a little more challenging than we had thought. But there will be a number. We do want you to share it. And the person answering the phone is going to be a skilled staff member at being able to kind of triage the concern, ask questions, get to the root of things. This is based on work that we've been doing in fraternity and sorority life with neighbors over the last several years, working to build relationships. And when they have a number of a staff member in fraternity and sorority life to call with their concern, that seems to have made all the difference for folks. So similarly, we're not assuming that the parties and concerns will only be fraternity and sorority life affiliated. Actually, our IFC and Panhandle have voted to discontinue and suspend all large social activities that they register. And our MGC, our Multicultural Geek Council, and the MPHC, our Historically African American Council, are canceling all their events too. But we know that the official events are one thing, but that other events will just happen in smaller settings. So that's why we think this COVID concern lines being publicized will allow us to intervene early and talk to those students and remind them. We also know it's a natural tendency for students to come back and want to see their friends, right? But how can we get them to do that in much smaller groups than they're used to doing that in? That's the focus of our student leaders' efforts and our collective efforts.
If you could, if that could be one of the takeaways, is to distribute that number to us for our network distribution, I think we all be grateful.
Absolutely.
The only other question I had was about the voluntary registry. That you said that you would have more information later this week about how much participation you had. What was the deadline for students to respond to that?
Well, they are instructed to do it before coming back to campus. And as you know, we know students are on very different schedules depending on when their check-in is for the residence hall, or off-campus students when their leases start. I hope, and we're encouraging folks to do that right away. If they're coming back and they believe in its principle and want it to be effective, we need that phone number as soon as possible. So we've never tried anything like this before, so I don't want to promise that we'll get this phenomenal response rate. But our educational efforts response rates, with the reminders that we do and the tracking that we do, we have completion in the 90th percentile and above with those efforts. So we're hoping that we're going to get a strong response.
Is the biggest selling point basically to avoid police intervention? I mean, do they understand that there's a potential for a greater consequence if they can't negotiate it? Is that kind of how it's being promoted?
Yes, being careful to not either, give out the impression that police response is a bad thing, or that people shouldn't call the police directly if there's an elevated emergency. But yes, the students are in their own ways telegraphing that to students. And we said very directly in the material in the course, we're asking you for this information so that we can respond at a lower level and not have to involve law enforcement. So we've said it carefully to not appear to be dissing law enforcement, but really promoting this.
Elizabeth, one of the main emphasis, and we're in constant contact with Chief Cox and the APD, along with our departments, is educate as much as we can, inform, and even if there's an incident, education and the deterrence is our first response before the enforcement. So really, we're really going to emphasize on the education, and both police departments agree with that approach, and we've been in really good communication with both departments.
I want to thank you for all the thought that's been put into this plan. I do appreciate how it's front loaded in terms of prevention, because none of us want to see an outbreak, and the only way we're going to prevent that is to have it on the preventative side. So I'll leave time for others to ask questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Lorie.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Laura and Michael, for being here, and Chief Cox. I know we're running a little late with this, but this is important. Do we have any idea who's going to be paying for the AAPD's portion of this ambassador program? Will this be borne by the city? And then I still haven't really heard much detail when it comes to enforcement, and we're seems like completely reliant on voluntary compliance. And is there anything going to come in terms of repercussions to students who violate these, this social contract? It just, to me, it's all carrot and no stick, and I'm not very comfortable with a policy that just doesn't have any consequences. It's thought out on the education side, and that's what the university does well, obviously. But I just, I'm a little uncomfortable without any type of repercussion for failing these social contracts.
Maybe I can take the first stab at that, and then Chief Cox can jump in on the budget question. So, and I'm sorry, I did gloss over that. That was when I was presenting without the slides in front of me. So when I mentioned the infrastructure pieces of the conduct code, our work with group accountability and the residence halls, all of those allow us to have the enforcement angle that you're looking for. We're not leading with it, and even in our first interactions, it is education for compliance. But in a situation that is escalated, or in a situation where we've reminded once or twice and we're still not getting compliance, we're able then, if it's a student organization that hosted an event that had too many people at it that caused a problem, or an individual that was the host of something at their house that got out of control, we can hold either the group or the individual accountable through our processes at the university. So that's the Office of Student Conflict Resolution for Individuals, and our a Center for Campus Involvement, CCI, through in the Michigan Union for groups. So I didn't emphasize that kind of harder core accountability piece, but it is absolutely there. In addition to law enforcement actions that could be taken, and I'll let Chief Cox speak to that.
Chief?
Yeah, certainly. Every year when the students come back, we certainly allocate some resources just for what they call party patrols and things of that nature. Hopefully there won't be those kind of parties out there. So we're taking what we traditionally do and we're applying it more to, proactively going out there and making sure that people are doing this. If we get a call through 911, we will respond. But we're not doing anything in addition as far as resources are concerned, but we're doing what we would have traditionally have done in a little different way regarding the students coming back in the summer. The fall for our school.
And Ali, one other thing I'd add is that both the Ann Arbor Police Department and the University Department of Public Safety, we already have officers assigned for engagement that regularly do this. So this will be a kind of a manifestation, and we'll utilize their skills. Laura mentioned that they'll be part of this walking ambassador crew. So those engagement officers for both the police departments are already in place.
Thank you.
Councilmember Griswold, Lum, then Grand.
Okay, to follow up with what Councilmember Lowie said, and I totally support education, encouragement, engagement, but we know that we have some fraternities that are no longer affiliated with the University of Michigan due to poor decisions. How can we get control of that situation so we're not responding after there's been, a party with 150 students? And sort of to balance that, I want to mention that I'm chair of the Friends of the Michigan League. I was down there this weekend planting flowers, removing poison ivy, and so I'd like to encourage everyone to come down to the Michigan League Garden for outdoor safe social distancing.
That sounds great. I'll be in the garden on Friday, so I will check out your handiwork.
Okay.
To answer the question about our disaffiliated groups, you are right to be concerned about them because they do have less oversight from the university because they are not directly connected through fraternity and sorority life. We've been working proactively with each of those national organizations and with the NIC, which governs all IFC fraternities. And so the proactive work and the individuals involved in those houses or in live out locations for the disaffiliated groups may take advantage of the register your address and let us know who we can reach to, which would be another helpful form of connection to the students. But short of that, we are in a position of notifying any their national organizations of any behaviors that happen there and pushing really hard for them to hold their groups accountable. And we have had pretty good luck with that, working with our disaffiliated groups recently. And so I'm hopeful everybody grasps the seriousness of this situation. And they are international organizations, and they don't want their organization to be the organization responsible for harm. And so I'm hoping that they will, in spite of not.
And Kathy,
Councilor-
Kathy, just real quickly, Mayor, Kathy, the last couple of weeks, we've, as Laura mentioned earlier, we've had discussions with our partners at the state and the governor's staff and at the county. And we have, there's been broad discussions about limiting the size of the crowds, which is really, regardless of the orientation of the, the hosts of the parties, it's the size of the outdoor gathering still at 100 people by executive director that we would really like to lower. So we are working with our county and state partners on that.
Councilmember Lum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Rain, aka Mike, and Dean Jones for your presentation tonight on the Culture of Care Ambassador program that you're going to be rolling out. And obviously, that's you've put a great deal of thought and care into developing this program, and the community will be gratified, I'm sure, at this viewing, at your presentation, and also when they because we will be, of course, sharing it with as many folks, as we can. We've all been fielding questions about the U of M's plans and how the city is going to coordinate planning with the U of M. And I also appreciate, Mike, that you've been attending the Merchant Association meetings, and you've been reaching out to the landlords and the Chamber and Spark and all the groups that you mentioned, because they are critical partners, obviously. One thing I'm wondering, thank you also for this U of M EOC reporting line for public health concerns, and that will be a number that I know residents will appreciate having. And I think it's great that you are approaching this like your ambassador program, like we've done with the party patrols in the past, because when there is a contact for a neighborhood association, we've got a couple in the second ward, of course, and the third ward where the neighborhood associations have intermingled with lots of student housing, off-campus student housing. Having a number, having a contact is, and having that introduction made through the ambassador program as part of orientation has really helped move the needle on getting the students sent to be more neighborly, frankly, and then the neighbors know who to contact. So I think that's that's a great protocol and good approach that you're again modeling here. So thank you for that. My one question really has to do with whether or not it would help to strengthen the coordination of the ambassador program and the joint accountability that you spoke to and the collaborative efforts in general. If the city were to, like Mike's gonna know where I'm coming from, and Tom and the city attorney, if the city were to adopt a temporary ordinance like they did in State College, PA, that speaks to, again, that aligns the city's policies with the university's policies. In State College, they have a temporary ordinance, and I've sent this to the city attorney's office and Mr. Crawford on, the wearing of masks when they're required, exemptions, on limitations on gathering size, and it speaks to enforcement. And I heard that you said that the U of M is stressing education versus compliance. Would that help? In fact, in State College, the university president of Penn State endorsed the State College City Council's temporary ordinance, said this would be helpful. I don't want to put you on the spot, and I can provide this, but it would be good to know if that would be helpful to your efforts.
Well, Jane, whether it's, as I mentioned, we are, working with the county, and we're hopeful something is forthcoming. They've been very cooperative. Tom and Mayor Taylor have been involved with some of the meetings with the state. It's just, whether it's the county, we're encouraged that the county is considering a lower number. Anything below 100 is more manageable. From a contact tracing standpoint, from a enforcement issue. So wherever it comes from, the county, the state, or the city, the University of Michigan, we're not in a position to dictate. And so we are willing to work with any partnership on that lowering. But from a practical standpoint, from a lot of different reasons, Jane, the lower number is more manageable, but it's up for either the state or the county or the city to decide.
Right, and I don't want to put you on the spot, and I think if the city did something like this, it's just intended to be helpful and ensure that that the rules on the city side of State Street, for example, mirror the behaviors and rules that are in place for the central campus area and North Campus and beyond. So yeah, it's just about alignment and education and doing and following the guidelines that the county public health department stipulates.
Yeah, and we're
Thank
very much in
you.
support of that. And Tom Crawford and I talk a lot. He's seen my basement more than some of my family members because this is where I'm set up now. But and Mayor Taylor's been on the calls too. So I think we are in alignment. We're certainly in communication, and we look forward to working with the city going forward, as well as the county and our state partners as well.
Excellent, thank you.
Councilor Grant.
Thank you. I appreciate both of your being here. I'm also very much in favor if there's anything we can do as a council to get that number as low as possible. No one in this council group works more closely with undergraduate students than I do, and so I've been asked a lot about what I think about students coming back, and my first response, as sarcastic as it may be, is that what could possibly go wrong with bringing back tens of thousands of people whose frontal lobes aren't developed yet, right? During a pandemic. So I understand that we're all building this bridge as we cross it, and that people are doing the best we can, but as a staff member at the university, it gives me some insight into a lot of the fear that that people in the community have about interacting with this population, because personally, like, I am being forced to have face-to-face meetings with students who are going through self-screenings, and that's representative of, I think, a lot of people in our community who feel like they're being forced to interact with students who aren't being tested, who are using a tool that anyone could. It's pretty easy to game the system if you're just being asked to enter your temperature and do you have symptoms. So I think part of what you're hearing is or I'd like you to hear it from me, is that the more that we can do to test, I appreciate having the number in the community to call, but at the same time, if ambassadors show up at a party and there are 150 people there, it's too late. That's not prevention at that point. So, we know where these students are, we know where students are coming from, a lot of hotspots. I wish there was at least something in high risk areas that we could do to at least reach out to those students a little more proactively, in areas where we know they're, or students who are getting on planes, thinking about their modes of travel. I think there's a lot that we're not doing, that would give more people in the community peace of mind. I know we choose, much like when I talk to residents who live next to a fraternity house, like, I feel also when you live in the community, that there are consequences of living, mostly good, but sometimes negative. And but I just also want you to, as a parent, like, there's a real anger amongst parents that that the lack of prevention on the university's part, the lack of, the push to go forward with these plans is keeping our own kids out of school and delaying some of their and impacting some of their social and emotional development. So so I'm not expecting a response for that. I just want to articulate it because it is something that I've heard again and again and again, and that when we talk about prevention, I would really like us to talk about prevention that's preventative and not, and I like the idea of not involving law enforcement, but to pretend that that's prevention just isn't actually prevention.
Any other questions? I guess I'd just like to thank you for coming. The both of you, obviously, there's a great deal of work that's gone into this. There are real and material, community concerns about what is to come. I think everybody, is under no illusions that the University of Michigan and the city of Ann Arbor are intertwined, geographically and by interest. We are so pleased that the students are coming back for all the good that they bring, but at the same time, there are incredible concerns as well, and it's good to know the university's work that's been done to address it. To touch upon a couple of things, well, I guess really just one main thing, and that is to say, with respect to the off-campus activities, the off-campus number of aggregation, the executive order limits that to 100. It's not within our jurisdiction to do that on its own, rather to take that step on its own. But I would be look to county health to take some fairly swift action to reduce the allowable number of congregation here in Washtenaw County, or here certainly in Ann Arbor, in the next couple of days, I hope, and would expect a resolution from council in support of that action in the event that it came. I think we're all looking to, well, we understand the exuberance of youth, but we also understand the exuberance of youth, right? So I just want to again say thank you, and look forward to continuing communication between city and universities to how we all can contain the spread and keep community safe. And I'm using community in all the senses: permanent residents, students who first day students as well. So
well, on behalf of Laura and I and the greater university, thanks again for this opportunity. We promise to keep connected with everybody. I think everybody on this call has my contact info. As our plans develop, please don't hesitate to reach out. And in turn, we will be proactive about keeping this body up to date, not only with what we're doing internally, but if there's a progress with our county and state partners. But again, thank you for the time tonight and the questions. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We now come to public comment reserve time. Public comment reserve time is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council and the community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at public comment reserve time, one needs to have signed up in advance by contacting our city clerk. To speak at public comment reserve time, please dial the number on your screen, that number being 877-853-5247. That is 877-853-5247. At that point, enter the meeting ID, 929-3607-3877, 3607-3877. After you've dialed the meeting ID, please enter *9 to indicate that you are up and ready to go. You will be called upon in order. Speakers have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time. Our clerk will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your 3 minutes are up. When your 3 minutes are up, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Our first speaker is Peter Hauk.
Mr. Hauk, you can go ahead. Mr. Hauk, your phone is muted. There you go.
Hello, council members. Thanks for the chance to once again comment on our crosswalk ordinance. I'm Peter Hauk, resident on Yeoman Court. 6 weeks ago during public comment, I explained why so many people want to keep Ann Arbor's existing crosswalk ordinance. Crossing is easier and less stressful now than it was in 2009. If any of you disagrees, please email me directly and we can go for a walk together. I'm sure you will agree. Residents keep telling us that they don't want our ordinance to change. Since the July 6th meeting, over 150 additional people have signed the petition asking you not to endorse HB 4738. That brings the total up to 458. Going back to the last time this was on council's agenda, Councilmember Griswold, you expressed surprise at the outcry and you called it drama. That was the word you used. That word drama really minimizes the concerns of your constituents, and it demonstrates that you do not understand why this is so important to people. So I will make it plain. Please understand that so many of us get exercised about changes to our ordinance because it's scary. I'm scared for my kids or my parents to have to cross the street by darting through gaps in traffic. I'm scared that I'll have to do it. Is this gap in traffic big enough? Should I wait for the next one? How long will that be? How fast is that car going? Do you remember thinking stuff like this in crosswalks back in 2009? Because I do. So the idea of Ann Arbor City Council supporting a state law that even has a chance of superseding our local ordinance is scary. Also at the July 6th meeting, there was some discussion about whether or not HB 4738 would indeed supersede our ordinance. If it doesn't supersede it, then it doesn't succeed in the stated goal of creating a single statewide law. If it does supersede our ordinance, then it will take away protections that many Ann Arbor residents have said we want. Either way, our council shouldn't be endorsing the bill as it's written. One way goes against what residents have said they want. The other way endorses a bill that won't affect us. You would be giving your opinion on a bill that applies to the rest of the state, but not to Ann Arbor. You should instead be advocating for a state law that gives everyone in Michigan the same protections that we enjoy here in Ann Arbor.
30 seconds.
I do enjoy these opportunities to connect with you and visit with my city council. However, can we please postpone this resolution until HB 4738 includes the protections that Ann Arbor residents have told you they want? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mojan Savabiasfani.
Ms. Savabiasfani, you can unmute your phone and speak.
Hello?
There you go. Your phone was
Hello?
muted. You can go ahead.
Thank you very much. The title of my talk tonight was Don't Let IDF Iyer and her treasurer turn Ann Arbor City Council into an army for Israel. City officials have censored that title from the agenda. Don't let IDF Iyer and her treasurer, Ms. Lowenstein, turn you into an army for Israel. The apartheid state of Israel has massacred thousands of Palestinians, and it has been a close friend of South African apartheid state. They even wanted to sell them nuclear weapons. Those of you who claim to be anti-racist or progressives, you cannot pretend to be progressive or anti-racist if you are gunning down Palestinian people. Still, veteran honchos of the Friends of the IDF, that's Israel Defense Forces, Michigan chapter, have helped to ramrod Jen Iyer into the Ann Arbor City Council with money, endorsements, and psychological warfare conducted on the Ann Arbor electorate. Iyer's campaign treasurer, Joan Lowenstein, presided over 40,000 or more in campaign contributions to a mountain of money, which effectively walked people into the polls and elected Iyer to Ann Arbor City Council. Don't forget that Lowenstein said monstrous things in the news media against anyone who got in the way of the apartheid state of Israel. Lowenstein said extremely ugly things against me and against Ramlawi and Council Member Hayner. All that Ramlawi and Hayner did was to say that we ought to be able to discuss all that money which is going to Israel. I went further. I spoke against the 38 billion which the government is handing over to Israeli military as Israel continues to gun down Palestinian people. I still demand that Ann Arbor City Council approve the simple resolution, we are against military aid to Israel. Again, don't let IDF Ayer and her treasurer turn you into an army for Israel. And the next part of my talk is this. I've listened to you talk about opening of this campus. You are not ready to have 40,000 young people come into this town. You cannot protect them. You cannot protect the public. You must close the campus and have remote classes like countries who have been able to contain corona. United States government is the most atrocious response, has had the most atrocious response, if any at all, to corona. Hundreds and thousands of people have died and more will die because you are incompetent. You cannot put.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Blaine Coleman.
Do I hit *6?
No,
you are,
you're still on.
audible, sir.
I'm audible? Okay. You know, it's really impossible for any of you to claim to be anti-racist when you are doing your damnedest to block every single humanitarian resolution that might protect the Palestinian people. For years, you have blocked the resolution against military aid to Israel. For years, you have blocked every resolution to boycott the apartheid state of Israel. For years, you have blocked every resolution to divest from the apartheid state of Israel. Please, please don't insult the intelligence of people in Ann Arbor by pretending that you are anti-racist. As long as you protect this racist state of Israel, you are yourself racist to the bone. As long as you keep protecting Israel from even the slightest cosmetic human rights resolutions, you are racist to the bone. You might as well be wearing a Klan outfit. As long as you are protecting Israel while it guns down thousands of Palestinians, you are racist to the bone. And in my opinion, you are a Ku Klux Klan city council. Don't pretend to be anti-racist when you are backing the apartheid state of Israel to the hilt. Don't pretend to be anti-racist when you are doing everything to block the most simple, desperately needed humanitarian resolutions that might protect the Palestinian people. Don't pretend. Do any of you have anything to say about this, or are you going to just go on being accomplices to the mass murder of the Palestinian people? Do any of you have any change of heart? Will any of you stand up and finally say, enough, we are finally going to support the resolution against military aid to Israel? Will even one of you stand up and finally say that? Because most of you sitting there at that table are going to be gone in a short time.
30 seconds.
The mayor has a gigantic steamroller of money. For example, look at the $40,000 that got Ayer into office, IDF Ayer into office. This is the kind of gigantic money steamroller that's probably going to roll all of you out of the city council soon. So while you can, stand up for human rights. Stand up for the human rights of the Palestinian people while you can.
Mayor, that was time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Donna Walters. Pardon me, Donna Waters.
Ms. Waters, you can unmute your phone.
Can you hear me now?
You bet we can.
Okay, hello. My name is Donna Waters and I'm representing Survivor Speak. I'm honored to speak to you tonight. We are excited about the wait list for affordable housing. We do, however, have some concerns. We are concerned because we feel like this would be an online trend, and some of our elders may not be able to effectively access this list. We want to make sure the process is fair and easily accessed to everyone, including who may not be technically savvy. One of the other concerns would be the income verification. We understand that affordable housing means different things to different folks, but we are speaking on behalf of low income or no income folks who have Section 8. The records show that the income guidelines would be fulfilled with folks just to have a Section 8 voucher. But we want to ensure that they won't be flagged, their applications won't be flagged or being held from the process. We have also heard this exclusion in times past. They're making it hard for folks to find housing in Ann Arbor. People are treated more like the help than actual wanted citizens, being able to work in Ann Arbor but not live there. We would ask the council to consider these factors and adjust a few things and then open the list. We want to be fair for everyone with all disparities that people of color are currently facing. This is something well within our control. Thank you for your time to hear from me and our hearts. We hope that Ann Arbor is well on its way to being a city that truly understands the need for racial equality. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is John McLaughlin.
Mr. McLaughlin, you can go ahead.
Good evening. In recent years, this public comment period has been used by some as a platform for hatred and bigotry. These voices have been persistent, and members of council have heard them many times, including this evening. Among other things, they advocate for resolutions on federal foreign aid that are way outside the jurisdiction of local government. They've staged protests outside one of our local Jewish congregations, forcing children to walk past swastikas and other offensive messages while going into a house of prayer. One of them recently ran for council in the 4th Ward, where my family resides. As a candidate, she tweeted anti-Semitic tropes, including cartoons that demonized her opponents and their supporters. When she lost, after 90% of our voters chose someone else, she responded by fabricating more anti-Semitic fiction. She released another offensive cartoon and made several claims about the winning candidate that were so preposterous and offensive, I'm not even going to repeat them. Attacks singling out any race or religious groups are damaging to our society and outright disgusting. In 2018, the Anti-Defamation League reported there were over 1,800 anti-Semitic incidents in the United States, including 2 mass shootings at synagogues. Here in Ann Arbor, our local skate park was vandalized in 2017 with racist anti-Semitic graffiti. In a society where grievance and anger are all too common, we must stand up and speak out against dangerous voices of extremism. We must respond to these voices with a loud chorus of tolerance, acceptance, and respect. I realize there's a wide range of viewpoints on Israel and the long history of violence between Israelis and Palestinians. I didn't call in tonight with a solution on that issue or even an opinion. I'm here simply to say there is no place for hatred and bigotry in our community, not on any issue, not toward any person. I respect everyone's right to speak out, but I believe that right comes with a responsibility to stay away from words of hate, especially when hatred can tragically lead to violence. I call upon members of this council and across the community to speak out against bigotry wherever it appears. There is no room for silence, and there should be no place for hate. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there communications today from council? Councilor Berlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to speak to your veto of the nonpartisan ballot referendum question. Although your veto of allowing voters to decide the question of nonpartisan elections was certainly not surprising, I did want to make a few comments on your veto message. The message was pretty much identical to your veto message a year ago. Most of the message is comprised of your views on why Ann Arbor should remain an outlier, one of 3 cities in Michigan, and unlike all of our typical benchmark cities, and conduct local elections on a partisan basis. Although I could not disagree more with that position, that's not what I want to speak to. What I want to speak to is your discussion of why this should not go to the voters. You say, quote, not every issue that could go to the voters must go to the voters, period, end quote. You ask, quote, where is the line? End quote. I'll tell you where the line should be and where you, Mr. Mayor, have drawn the line. They're quite different. Where the line should be is that important fundamental governance question should be decided by voters. Reasonable people would agree with that. Reasonable people would also agree that how Ann Arbor conducts its local elections, partisan or nonpartisan, meets the standard of an important fundamental governance question, especially considering Ann Arbor is the clear outlier and voters have not weighed in on this in over 60 years. That's where the line should be. And you know that, Mr. Mayor. You know this isn't some mundane, everyday decision elected officials should make. But rather than just be honest and say, I'm going to oppose or veto allowing the voters to do something I do not agree with, you try to make the, absurd argument that this decision isn't appropriate for voters to decide. Mr. Mayor, if there's any decision voters should have the opportunity to decide, it's how local officials are elected. You know that, everyone knows that, and everyone knows you know that. So just be honest, Mr. Mayor. Just say the charter allows you to veto allowing the voters to do something you don't agree with. And that's precisely what you're doing here. Just say it's your right and it's a political decision. Don't try to capture some high ground by suggesting it's not a question worthy of voters' consideration. That's just absurd and insulting. The veto message then gets even more absurd by suggesting some sort of equivalency between the mayor's veto of a nonpartisan election referendum and council members' hesitancy to place ranked choice voting on the November 3rd ballot. The mayor writes that council members, quote, viewed the proposal as unwise and voted accordingly, period, end quote. No, Mr. Mayor, as you well know and was very clearly articulated at that meeting, the resistance to placing ranked choice voting on the ballot was not because council members thought ranked choice voting was unwise. In fact, most expressed support for the concept, but because it isn't legal. Ranked choice voting is not allowed in Michigan, so voters would be voting on a hypothetical situation, and that just doesn't make any sense. I recognize it's done, and it's time to begin collecting signatures. You forced Ann Arbor residents to jump through hoops, much like you did with the library lot. That's unfortunate, but that's what we'll do. Thank you for listening.
Councilor Nelson.
Thank you. I just have a couple of announcements of some street resurfacing projects in Ward 4 and one sort of bordering Ward 3. Starting this Thursday, there's street resurfacing that's scheduled to begin on Avondale Avenue, Coronado Street, Hanover Court, Hanover Road, Las Vegas Drive, Sioux Parkway, Waverly Road, and Westfield Avenue. I understand that door hangers were distributed in the last couple of days. And there's a second project that's going to be street resurfacing that will begin this Wednesday on Granger Avenue between South State and Packard. And that's it. Thank you.
Councilor Griswold.
Yes, I'd like to give an update regarding some mobility issues. Unfortunately, we do not have a mobility committee yet, although council passed a resolution in February for such a committee. There's been extensive work done, and I'll just use this opportunity to give an update until such time as we have a mobility committee. There were meetings regarding Lower Town, the North Main corridor, the connected vehicle corridor, and others. And I'd like to specifically thank Councilmember Ackerman for chairing a meeting last week, which was titled the MDOT strategy meeting. The focus of that was on improvements to the Huron, the crosswalk on Huron at Thayer, and we also talked about other improvements that were needed on the Huron-Washtenaw corridor. We're making progress. I did receive an email from Mark Sweeney, who's the MDOT TSC manager. I'm just really frustrated that we don't have a mobility committee. I believe that we continue to play politics, and it's really sad. The primary is over. It's time for us to start collaborating and working together and acknowledging our differences. I also want to mention the very successful Dingle Unity Luncheon that was held last Sunday. I was one of the co-hosts of that event. There was safe social distancing outdoors. The speeches are on the Washtenaw County Democratic Party website. And lastly, I want to mention that a jury trial is scheduled for August 24th, and this is regarding the very serious pedestrian crash that occurred in January of 2019 on Huron at the crosswalk near Thayer that was poorly lit, and the pedestrian stepped off the refuge island, according to eyewitnesses, without looking up and into the path of two vehicles. Thank you.
Further communication from council? I've got one. I'd like to recommend or like to request confirmation of the following appointments that were presented to City Council at the August 6th regular session to the Energy Commission: Larry Kerber, Bridget McComber, and Ember McCoy. May I have a motion, please? Moved by Councilmember Smith, seconded by Councilmember Ackerman. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is approved. And I guess with respect to the Mobility Committee, I'd refer council members to my email of Monday before the primary seating the committee. I'm going to be meeting with Ms. Harrison to establish the agenda and set up, or establish an initial agenda and set up some potential times, which will be distributed to members named to that committee.
Thank you.
May I have a motion, please, to approve the consent agenda? Moved by Councilmember Lum, seconded by Councilmember Smith. Discussion of the consent agenda, which I will note omits CA 9 and CA 13, which have been withdrawn. Councilmember Ackerman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could I ask that Ms. Gelati be added to the panel? I want to ask a question about CA4, but I don't want to pull it. I think it's great. Just want to get a few clarifiers. I thought the comments made by a member of the public were good opportunity to have some education. If it takes a moment for her to jump over, I'm happy to wait. Oh, looks like she's here. Hi, good evening. Thanks for being with us.
You're on mute.
Thanks. There were two potential issues raised with the program at public comment. I just wanted to provide some comfort for the audience. First of all, thank you for the work. It's exciting to see that affordable housing units are being placed in market rate developments. And it's exciting to know that in our downtown, after some zoning reforms, more may be coming online in future years. But the first that a member raised was the online nature of the wait list. For members who may not have access to internet or not be technologically literate, can you talk about how one might access this wait list and get their name on it?
Yes, thanks. One of the things that we did really early on as we were developing is we reached out to the Barrier Busters network of nonprofits These are most of the human services providers in the county. And a lot of them have relationships with folks that are looking for housing. It also included a lot of our homelessness, actually all of our homelessness providers, with the intent that they would be available to assist those who might need some support. We also made it available that folks could call our staff or set it up an appointment. We know it's a particularly odd time with the pandemic still going on where you can't just necessarily drop in the same way that you once did. But we did want to make those provisions either to work directly with our office or with our many partners to have someone assist over the phone, potentially in person, to get on the wait list. So it obviously is a concern, and it's something we're trying to find our best way to kind of sort through to make sure that there was ability for people to get support with that.
Awesome. And the second concern, and hopefully this one's an easy one, can you give some comfort to members of the public that if your source of income is a housing voucher, you will not be discriminated against?
Right. Well, the City Council recently approved the anti-discrimination policy that included some provisions around source of income. So it in effect says that if you have a voucher, that voucher can be used to be considered towards your income. We actually work with legal and with Kevin McDonald in particular to make sure that that similar language was in the affordability agreement that was being drafted in tandem with the wait list. So it was clear that the developer had to adhere to that policy. And if for some reason our office approves someone for income on the income side, because what we do basically is we pull from the wait list, we approve their income, and then we send folks over. They do have to apply through the property manager, meet those standards. But if they reject them, they have to send back to us exactly why and in detail. And if there was any concern around the discrimination, that we would kick over to the legal department to hopefully do some follow-up. So we haven't obviously done this yet, but that's part of the process that we put in place so that if there is any reason as to why, they would have to tell us in detail and then we'd be able to follow up.
Thank you very much. And thanks for the policy and the work of the Housing and Human Services Advisory Board.
Thank you.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. And Councilmember Ackerman basically accomplished everything that I was gonna say. The only thing that I can add is that I'm gratified to hear that you're working with barrier busters, because the constituent who reached out to me expressed similar concerns about accessibility of the wait list and complimented barrier busters as a very accessible program and one that it's been effective in reaching people that it needs to get help to people who need it. So thank you.
Thanks. I appreciate the feedback.
Councilmember Lorie.
Thank you. I'd like to pull out CA6. And then while we're on CA4, this wait list uses 1140 as its first property. And if I'm correct in my assumption, that property was involved in a fire recently, or is that a different property? 1140 Broadway, that was involved, there was a fire there, correct?
Yes.
So how does that affect the timeline with this wait list? And are these dates going to still be honored in this resolution here? Are we looking at these dates being pushed back?
I had the exact same question, as you can imagine, because we didn't want to pull people's names off and not know what to tell folks who are interested in getting these properties. I did reach out to the developer over the weekend, who did say that he was expecting to have occupancy in September. We're going to make sure we're double checking that with the various city departments, who will be, building department in particular, who will be doing the C of Os to make sure that that timing feels right before we start to move forward. But according to the developer, he's still expecting to occupy units in September.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hayner.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. This is also a question on CA4 and also a comment. I tried to facilitate signing up someone on the wait list who didn't have computer access, and we got online about 1:10. I know the list opened at 1. We were done at 1:32, and he was number 54 on the wait list already. And so, you know, that even having a facilitator didn't help him get any closer to the front of that line, I don't think. I'm not sure if, you know, if that was, you know, if we were getting 1 or 2 applications a minute or what. It just took us that long to go through it. You know, it took us about 12, 15 minutes to go through the forms. So I guess my question is, how are we gonna know that this is working for folks who don't have access to it? And once people start getting in these apartments, I understand there's privacy issues around these matters, but how are we gonna find out just what sort of folks are being helped in our community by this? Is there a way that we can look back and see who's gotten an apartment and kind of get some kind of anonymized statistical information about them? And I don't know. I'm just curious how we're going to know that these are helping the people that need help the most.
Oh, it's a great question. So on the front end, whoever we pull off, obviously we have to make sure that they're income qualified. So we will know at lease up exactly who's in those units. Obviously we will keep their information anonymous, but we can kind of generally speak to incomes and some demographic information, although we ask people for permission, so we'll only share it if they've given that permission. And then every year we have to recertify those incomes. So actually we're revisiting these every single year. So the first 8 folks or households that lease up, and in a year's time, we'll be revisiting with the property manager to get that same income information to verify that their rents are being charged appropriately and that they meet the incomes. So it's something we do every single year. And so we will have that data every single year. I think kind of a side piece that maybe you're getting at a little bit is, we only have 8 units, right? So we currently, I looked right before this meeting, and we have 411 individuals who have signed up for the wait list, which we could say speaks to the need. And I know that the Ann Arbor Housing Commission also has a similar wait list, but different types of properties, obviously for their properties that are open currently. So I think we have some of that demographic information that we can be looking at to sort of see where the need is coming from in some cases. These units are slightly different. They're really just below market rate units. So just to distinguish for those that might be serving homeless populations for folks that have minimal incomes as well.
Yeah, this constituent was definitely income qualified for this. I have no doubt. So then just tell him hang tight, and as more units open up in these projects and so on, he will hold his place on that list if necessary. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, and reading, it was a little unusual because I saw that we didn't approve the rules for the wait list, and then the wait list already started. It was formed without these rules, but these rules, can I presume that if we find out this isn't really working for us, that we can revisit these rules and change them in the future and so on?
Absolutely. And it's our intent, and also the Housing and Human Services Advisory Board, to, it's only 8 units. So in a way we have a soft launch of this project, and we can see how it's playing out, look at it before the next 7 units would come online next summer, ideally, and if we need to make tweaks, we could do so probably in the spring.
Councilmember Amlawi.
Thank you. You talked about wait lists here. Is there a chance that there's duplicity here with people on both wait lists that you described with the Ann Arbor Housing Commission and the wait list that you talked about as well with 450 people? Are there people on multiple lists?
Likely. We haven't compared the list to date. I will tell you that I would encourage anyone to get on as many wait lists as possible if they're in need of affordable housing. I think that's what we generally try and encourage people. If you don't have your name on a list, there's no chance to get any housing. I don't know that we would necessarily compare the list, and they are a little bit different depending on that particular population. So, but yes, I'm sure there is some overlap.
Thank you.
Further discussion of the consent agenda? All in favor of the consent agenda with the exception of CA6, please say aye.
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 All opposed? It is approved with 11 council, this consent agenda is approved, 11 council members present, thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement with respect to CA1, CA3, CA5. That is all. CA6, resolution to approve the Fuller Park parking lot and land, resolution to approve the Fuller Park parking lot land lease with the University of Michigan, moved by Councilmember Amlawi, second by Councilmember Graham. Discussion, please, of CA6. Councilmember Amlawi.
Thank you. I did not prepare it in text, but I would like to move to strike the last resolve clause in this amendment, given the administrator the power to automatically renew the lease without coming back to council.
Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Hayner.
I just feel
Discussion,
like,
Councilmember Lowy, you still have the floor?
thank you, Mayor. I just feel we are in obviously a very fluid situation. Things are changing daily. And although this is a nice financial windfall for our Parks Department with the increased revenue that comes from this land lease due to the different permitting for one of the lots, there is still some discomfort in the community as to the long-term use of these properties. And I feel with things moving as quickly as they have been, it would be prudent to revisit this in 1 year's time to reassess our situation and the direction we would like to take with this property.
Further discussion on the amendment? Got Councilmember Nelson.
If it's okay, I think I have a question for Councilmember Ramlawi. What do you anticipate in terms of a different use that we would be deciding on a year from now?
Well,
or do you have any
the
ideas?
concern is this started off in 1993 as a temporary relationship with the University of Michigan, and we're going on almost 30 years. And there's just concern that this is becoming a permanent fixture. And it's just good to have these discussions every 12 months to remind ourselves of the initial purpose of this relationship. This relationship was supposed to be temporary in nature and has become more permanent. And there's concerns that parkland will be lost without a close eye on this lease, this contract, and its uses. I think something like this needs to have a short leash.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilmember Hayner.
I just wanted to add that I agree with Councilman Ramwali's assessment that it's not a great burden to bring this back before council, and that an automatic renewal of this lease is not appropriate, considering that it is parkland. It is owned by the public. It's for all of our use, and we make this decision on behalf of the residents. And I think that we should continue to discuss and make this decision on behalf of the residents and not have it be an administrative decision. So I support this effort to strike this final resolve clause.
Councilmember Grant.
Thank you. I, yet again this year, participated in a discussion prior to this lease coming forward where staff takes the time to, make a lengthy presentation to some council members who have traditionally been interested in this issue, answers questions, and every year staff tries to bring forward a multi-year lease so that they don't have to go through the burden of doing this again. And then council asks them to do it for a year. And then we approve it every year. And staff continues to make solid recommendations to council, especially given this year, and this is likely to go into the future. It's not, parks lost over $400,000 by not being able to have camps this summer. So this is money that is not having to come out of our general fund that can support maintenance of our parks, activities within our parks that are critical right now for people to be able to get outside in these public spaces. So I think that after 30 years, the university and park staff have a really solid understanding of how these work. They've made adjustments, as we saw when they moved it to a blue lot. Now the university is paying for that. They have a great relationship and are willing to be flexible if we have events. For example, if we go back to having tournaments. So I'll be voting no. I trust staff to negotiate this and the administrator to make a decision about whether or not it's prudent to move forward with another year.
Mr. Rain?
Thank you, Mayor. The only thing I wanted to add is that to Ollie's point about, and Councilmember Grand just said it, you know, the other side of it, it is a 30-year relationship that we think has been mutually beneficial. And we have a solid relationship with the Parks Advisory Committee, but also the park staff, Josh and Derek and Colin. And so we look forward to continuing that because we do think it's been a solid relationship and mutually benefit for both entities. So that's kind of the strength of the 30 years, but that's all.
Further discussion of the amendment? Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Smith.
Councilmember Smith,
No.
Councilmember Rumlawi,
Yes.
Councilmember Hayner,
Yes.
Councilmember Bannister,
Yes.
Councilmember Griswold,
Yes.
Councilmember Lum,
Yes.
Councilmember Grand,
No.
Councilmember Ackerman,
No.
Mayor Taylor,
No.
Councilmember Eaton,
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
motion carries.
Further discussion, the main motion is amended.
I guess-
Councilmember Lowie?
Thank you. Yeah, in no way does this disparage the relationship that we have with University of Michigan. I know it's mutually beneficial. In no way was that last vote a vote of no confidence with that relationship. I just want to make that clear that I feel comfortable. And I just think this is something that needs to remain on a short leash until a long-term solution is agreed upon. We have to figure out something with this property in a long-term way. And hopefully, when it comes to council next time, there's a little bit more vision for what happens with this site. Otherwise, we can just continue to kick the can down the road 1 year at a time. But the intent of this was it to be temporary to begin with, and I think that needs to be reminded as we go forward.
Councilmember Nelson?
Thank you. I just wanted to add that when I was preparing for this meeting, I was remembering the last time this came before us, because I think that this was the parking agreement that came before us a while back when Councilmember Hayner brought up the idea of requiring electric chargers at the parking stations, and that the idea of circumstances changing a year from now, I understand that. I mean, certainly the times that we are in now are probably most fast changing in terms of what we're looking at, what the future is going to look like. We actually don't know. And so perhaps a year ago, there might be, I think there might be a more reasonable argument in terms of long-term planning that moves far into the future. But I supported Councilmember Rumlawi's amendment because I think it's just generally true that none of us know exactly what things are going to look like a year from now. And I'm going to support the main motion, obviously. Thank you.
Further discussion? Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Smith.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Rumlawi,
Yes.
Councilmember Hayner,
No.
Councilmember Bannister,
Yes.
Councilmember Griswold,
Yes.
Councilmember Lum,
Yes.
Councilmember Grand,
Yes.
Councilmember Ackerman, Mayor Taylor,
Yes.
Councilmember Eaton,
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
motion carries.
We now
Thank you
come to
very
a set of public. Thank you. We now come to a set of public hearings. Public hearings are opportunities for members of the public to speak to council and the community about a specific item on the agenda. That is to say, the specific subject matter of the public hearing. To speak at a public hearing, you need not have signed up in advance, but your speech must relate to the subject matter of the public hearing. To speak at a public hearing today, please dial the number on your screen, that number being 877-853-5247. That is 877-853-5247. When you've connected, please dial the meeting number ID 929-3607-3877, 929-3607-3877. During the public hearing that interests you, please enter *9. Please enter *9 to raise your hand so that you will be called upon. You will be called upon by identification of the last 3 digits of your phone number. Speakers will have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time. Our clerk will notify you when 30 seconds are left and when your 3 minutes are up. When your 3 minutes are up, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Public hearing number 1, an ordinance to amend Chapter 55, Unified Development Code, zoning of 4.5 acres from PUD, planned unit development, to C3, Fringe Commercial District, MMG Plymouth Road, mixed use rezoning, 3611 through 3621 Plymouth Road. Is there anyone who would like to speak at this public hearing? If you wish to speak at this public hearing, again, please enter *9 now. Please dial the number on your screen, enter the meeting ID, and enter *9 now.
Mayor, I don't see anyone who raised their hand. Mr. Crawford was concerned that the wrong meeting ID was displayed.
Mayor, I'm looking on the agenda we have printed, and I just want to double check the one that you referenced. I have 962-3652-2322.
Yes, I've made that error. I was using an old number. My apologies. Thank you for that correction. My apologies. If anyone is listening, please, and you dial the number 877-853-5247 and enter the meeting ID 962-3652-2322. That's 962-3652-2322. That's the number on your screen. The number which I gave you is incorrect. The instruction with respect to *9, however, is not incorrect. That is the proper procedure. Seeing no one having entered *9, this public hearing is closed. Public hearing number 2, resolution to approve MMG Plymouth Road mixed-use planned unit project site plan and development agreement 3611 through 3621 Plymouth Road. Is there anyone who would like to speak at this public hearing? To speak at this public hearing, please enter *9 now.
Mayor, I have one call.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 390. Caller 390, you can go ahead and speak. Caller, it looks like you'll have to unmute yourself.
And 95 South Korean.
Caller 390, you can go ahead.
Okay, so do I press anything?
You know, ma'am, you are audible. You're live, and we're waiting. We await your comment.
Okay. Hello, this is Amy C2 on Cedar Brook Road. I've been a board member of the Orchard Hills Maplewood Homeowners Association.
You have to unmute. You said you have to unmute.
Unmute. I don't know how to unmute.
No, ma'am, you are audible and ready to go. We can hear you.
Okay. Okay. Today I'm representing myself, not any organization, to identify where I live and what homeowners association I belong to is to show that I've been a frequent customer of CVS, Plum Market, and the Big Boy Restaurant when it was there. And so that's my comments are about the Green Road curb cut, entering and exiting these establishments. I use the curb cut on Green Road to enter and exit all the time. I can say that I'm very familiar with the area. As it stands now, the green...
Ma'am, it might make sense if you were to mute your television. If you were to mute your television, you would.
Okay.
That would
Okay.
probably clear things up.
Okay. Well, I'm going to a different room. The Green Road exit, the curb cut, as it stands now, the Green Road curb cut serves CVS pickup customers, drivers entering and leaving by turning left and right. It is congested and hazardous to both drivers and pedestrians. There's another curb cut off Green Road leading to a parking lot in front of the Reinhardt building at 2200 Green Road. There is a sign, however, between the Reinhardt parking lot and the road on the north side of the CVS building. No through road sign, discouraging drivers to drive through the Reinhardt parking lot. With the anticipated increasing traffic as a result of the MMG project, the curb cut by CVS on Green Road will definitely be more congested and hazardous than the current situation. I propose a simple and inexpensive way to solve the increased traffic problems. I propose that the city, developers, and property owners negotiate with the owners of the Reinhardt building to allow right turn traffic going toward north of Green Road to exit out of the Reinhardt curb cut, and to make the curb cut exit only. At the same time, make CVS curb cut enter only and left turn exit only.
30 seconds.
Of course, there are other more expensive and nicer looking solutions. My proposal is to encourage the developers and the city to think creatively for the safety and the pedestrians and of the pedestrians and drivers. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Mayor, I don't see any other hands raised.
Thank you. Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. Public hearing number 3, an ordinance to amend Chapter 55, Unified Development Code, zoning of 4.5 acres from R5 Hotel District to C3 Fringe Commercial District, 2800 Jackson Road Hotels, 2800 Jackson Road. Is there anyone who would like to speak at this public hearing? If you do, please dial the numbers on your screen and enter *9 now.
Mayor, I don't see anyone with their hands up for this hearing.
Thank you. Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. Public hearing number 4, resolution to approve 2800 Jackson Road Hotel Site Plan and Development Agreement, 2800 Jackson Road. Is there anyone who'd like to speak at this public hearing?
Mayor, I don't see anyone with their hands up for this hearing.
Thank you. Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. A1, we have before us the regular session minutes of July 27 and the regular session meeting minutes of August 6, 2020. May I have a motion, please, to approve these minutes? Moved by Councilmember Rumlawi, seconded by Councilmember Smith. Discussion of the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Minutes are approved. B1, an ordinance to amend Chapter 55, Unified Development Code, zoning of 4.5 acres in PUD, Planned Unit Development, to C3 Fringe Commercial District, MMG, Plymouth Road, Mixed-Use Rezoning 3611 through 3621, Plymouth Road. Is there any? Moved by Councilmember Smith, seconded by Councilmember Lum. Discussion, please, of B1. Councilmember Hayner.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I have a general question for maybe Mr. Leonard. I spoke to Derek about this a little bit 2 weeks ago. It's just a general question that we've all had in the past, and here we are having it again. We're asking to have this move from a planned unit development zoning to a C3 fringe that has planned project modifications, if I'm using the right terminology, to give a 50% increase in height, basically. And I don't have a problem with the form of the project, that it can be denser there. I mean, I share some of the neighbors' concerns about the traffic situation we're creating here and hazards around that. But once again, I don't understand why it is that we've taken an extant PUD with a site plan and gone to something we had to modify. Why do we continue to do this? What is the benefit to the city of creating these types of zonings that are so heavily modified that they don't really represent the type of zoning that it was? I would love an explanation of why we do this. Derek tried to explain it to me and I didn't quite follow, so.
Sure. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Brett Letter and I'm the planning manager. In this circumstance, the petitioner is seeking to rezone from planned unit development. So at its simplest, we are responding to the request from a petitioner in this circumstance. But in this case, staff and the Planning Commission believe that it's appropriate. For this particular planned unit development, the public benefits that were principle when it was first enacted was to allow mixed uses on site and other benefits as well. But one of the primary uses was to allow both a hotel and a restaurant to occur on the same property, which at the time our zoning ordinance restricted. Since that time, our code has evolved where we now encourage such mixed uses as opportunities to reduce trips between businesses and the like. And so in this particular circumstance, staff, the Planning Commission concurred that shifting from planned unit development in this circumstance would be appropriate. We have not, of course, considered a sort of a complementary planned unit development amendment application. We have reviewed the application and petition before us, but to that end, I think that it might be challenging in this circumstance, given the fact that the city has already taken action in the past to previously sort of split up the previous planned unit development by previous action on one of the parcels as that planned unit development, and the fact that our ordinances have now been updated. That principal benefit seems less relevant. And so certainly other public benefits could be explored, but that's, in this case, I think why you're seeing the planned unit development or seeking use zoning district other than the planned unit development.
And is it such that, so the C3, so the developer brought us a project they proposed, they work with you folks, they ask, what is the geometry of this project most closely fit? And you guys said C3 with these changes. There was nothing else that would have let that project fit on this site. C3 with these changes is as close to what they wanted to build, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that was influenced by one more general aspect of planned unit developments is that oftentimes planned unit developments are very specific, tailored, and restricted in the uses that are permitted. And so that can have a long-term challenge to the evolution of properties. By way of example, we have one planned unit development in the city that is very specific, that it requires only a bank to be occupying a certain space. That if that bank closes and is vacant, that is very restrictive to finding sort of a longer term productive reuse to that. So one of the reasons that we believe that a C3 zoning is appropriate, particularly for corridors like this, is the opportunity for more flexibility of uses long-term going forward.
Yeah, that's essentially what Derek was saying, that he felt like it set the property up in the future for to be more I don't know if more valuable is the right word, but just more appropriately prepared for resale in the event of a failure of the current petitioner, or 20 years now when there's no need for that hotel or whatever. So that's basically what you're saying, is that it puts it on our books in a way that makes it more useful to future development? I mean, is that accurate, or?
It's more flexible to future uses and sort of different uses of the property. I think additionally in this particular circumstance, we also have the precursor where similar action was taken on a previous component of the planned unit development. That is now the Plum Market. So the combination of sort of the restriction versus flexibility of a more general zoning district and previous legislative action that had been taken by the city both sort of leaned in support of this direction.
Is there any concern or any legitimacy to the concern that creating projects with these modifications that are so outside the scope of what the base zoning allows is going to come back and bite us when somebody brings a project that doesn't seem appropriate for a site and says, hey, you let this guy flex so much, he got 50% more under C3, I want 50% more under C3, even though we feel it wouldn't be as good a fit. Is there any concern about that in the future? I mean, I know it solely rests with us to say yay or nay, but if we said nay to the next one like this, couldn't they point back to this and say, hey, come on, that guy got it. What's the difference here?
Yeah, I think.
Are we setting a terrible precedent, I guess is my question.
Yeah, I don't think that. First of all, I would clarify, specific to planned project modifications, they are specifically dimensional. So when you're talking about other uses, I want to be clear that that is not on a possibility for you to grant alternative uses. So when you as the council are considering an appropriate zoning district, you are memorializing the uses that are appropriate for that. Planned project modifications do provide some dimensional, that is height or setbacks or open space flexibilities, but those modifications are not, they don't allow specific increases in density, for example, or to provide a use that wouldn't otherwise be permitted by the zoning district. They're also measured by sort of commensurate benefits that are being provided. There's a series of categories by which the city can consider weighing that modification of a dimensional requirement for attributes of the project. So generally in those circumstances, no, I don't believe the precedent is being set because they are very much being considered on a site-by-site basis. But I would also, just to be clear, the Planning Commission is definitely looking at planned project modifications now. I think that that is something that they're interested in, perhaps modernizing that as well to better link what our current community goals are versus perhaps some of them currently are reflected in the planned project ordinance, but I think they're perhaps more general than we might be aspired to as a city. So
is it possible? I'm sorry, just one more
looking
thing.
at it, but I don't think it's
We're at
precedent.
8 minutes on this line of inquiry.
All right. Well, this is a beneficial one. Is it possible then that, like, say we know that we have R2s and R4Cs and so on that can't be constructed as a R2 because of the dimensional variations or limitations on the site? Should we be considering encouraging development to ask for more planned project modifications in other situations to get the kinds of projects that are sitting on that site? You know what I'm saying, Brett? You understand where I'm going with that. We have all these R2s that we can't build because of the dimensional restrictions of the lot. Could those be planned project modified to be duplexes instead of single family homes or so on, which I know is something we've been looking into, right?
Yeah, some of those projects could be considered in that regard. Again, it doesn't help with density, but they could be considered for planned project modifications. As the site gets smaller, generally though, I would say you have less flexibility to probably hit some of those benefits that are articulated in the ordinance.
Councilor Below.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I voted against the rezoning to straight C3 at the June 15th meeting, and then voted for the C3 rezoning after the conditions were added at the July 20th meeting. I still have very mixed feelings on this Plymouth Road rezoning and site plan proposal. I do believe that the proposal represents a significant improvement to a site that frankly could use a bit of a refresh. The drive-through Paneras is certainly preferable to the vacant Big Boy, and the renovated hotel buildings are improvements as well. Plus, with the conditions, the developer is offering $75,000 affordable housing contribution and a few restrictions on future land use. My concerns continue to be traffic and the magnitude of the planned project modification. Peak volume in this Plymouth Green area is 3,400 vehicles an hour. That's a big number. And folks driving this area frequently, as I do, know that traffic congestion is not just a problem, it's a safety risk, particularly for those exiting the site trying to turn left or east onto Plymouth, as well as for those traveling on Plymouth who might get in their way. I'll get into that specific issue more when we discuss the site plan, but this is a situation where staff recognized the problem, made a recommendation that was rejected by the developer. As staff indicated in response to a question I'd asked about this in our Q&A, quote, "There is enough traffic volume generated to allow additional controls, but not enough to require them," period, end quote. As I mentioned at our last meeting, when I see language like that, it strongly suggests to me we'll have a problem down the road, but we're not dealing with it now when we should. I tried to deal with it, but received no help from city staff on the matter. Again, I'll discuss that more in a bit with the site plan. In terms of the planned project modifications, the request here is for 6 stories and 76 feet compared with a C3 maximum of 4 stories and 55 feet. Those are big variances. And when I see big variances like this, it does suggest to me the underlying zoning may not be right. I see pluses and minuses here, and I'm interested in hearing from other colleagues in terms of their views and concerns with the rezoning and the project. Thank you for listening.
Councilmember Lorie.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not sure if this is the point to bring up this concern or in the site plan, but the biggest issue I have with this project is adding more congestion to a congested area. And we are replacing a restaurant for a restaurant, a hotel for a hotel. So some of my worries are alleviated when I'm looking at we're using it for the same use, although slightly much bigger actually, hotel. I'm just concerned about the drive-through. We put a drive-through in an area that has got issues with traffic. And I just don't know if that's really wise. Why are we allowing a drive-through to exist in this area, and in many areas we don't? It just flies in the face of meeting in the middle somewhere and addressing the traffic concerns, and yet allowing for this development to continue just by the elimination of a drive-through. I mean, there's going to be an additional hundreds of cars coming to this site for the purpose of using a drive-through. These are not cyclists or people walking up, but coming in cars and leaving in cars. And it just flies in the face of some of these other community values and goals that we have. And I don't know where I land on it. I don't know if that is enough for me to vote against this, but it just doesn't seem it's been taken into account in a holistic way. And I perhaps ask staff as to how to address that. Can that be addressed? Can we eliminate that portion of that development to address the traffic issues that we have?
I'll touch it briefly. I know we do have Civil Engineer Lou available to answer any more specific questions about the traffic study. I will share, as it relates to the drive-through, I can share that this was definitely a topic of discussion, of a lot of attention at the Planning Commission level. The discussion was twofold. It was, how does the continual use and installation potentially of new drive-throughs sort of balance with the city's sustainability goals and non-motorized goals and mode share of transportation goals? And on top of that, how how would those be applied at different locations in the city? You know, for example, we don't allow drive-throughs in our downtown district. We do allow them as a special exception use in many commercial districts. In this case, the discussion I would say was, if we are going to accommodate drive-throughs in the city, they are probably most appropriate on very high vehicular volume areas where that mode of transportation is predominant. I think that the sustainability aspects has also been somewhat offset, if you will, by our community experience over this year and how our relationship with different kinds of businesses and services has really changed. And so there might be sustainability decisions that guide our support or lack of support for drive-throughs from a sustainability perspective. But in our current world, drive-throughs can serve an really important function in some circumstances. And then finally, I would just say that, I don't know if Luke wants to add anything to this, but when the traffic study is being considered for the proposed uses at this site, it is based on models generated by the type of business and the size of that business. And so whatever that business is identified, the traffic study analysis considers all of projected trips related to that. And in this case, for the restaurant, I presume that to be both drive-through and any types of other service.
Well, I appreciate the description you've given us. And I just don't think I agree with that assessment. We are in a situation here where it is heavily traveled. There's cars, in fact, at times too many, go in all directions, all speeds. It's congested. We have issues with property owners in that area not agreeing to come together in a way to alleviate the traffic concerns and that exist. And it flies in the face of our sustainability goals. These are single trip, single occupancy uses for a drive-through. And this is going to be done and is going to be used for decades to come. And I really have a hard time supporting this only because of that feature of this development. It just makes no sense. We already have concerns about traffic. We already have our sustainability goals and our values. And we want to get away from single trip, single occupancy car use. But here we're inducing it in an area that has issues to begin with. So I'm not so sure I can support this because of the drive-through. I mean, I don't know if it's a deal breaker, but it's one that gives me a heartburn to think about the consequences that this will induce. So I don't know if staff is able to go back and work with the petitioner and see if something can be done to negate the drive-through, but it just is inconsistent with our goals, our values, and our direction that we're supposed to be taking.
Can staff advise? I see that it appears that a Mr. Marcus is raising his hand. Is that the petitioner?
Mayor, I believe he's the petitioner.
That's the petitioner, yeah.
All right. Mr. Marcus, is this if with council's acquiescence, perhaps you'd like the opportunity to address this question of the drive-through?
And we're still on the zoning.
We are.
We haven't gotten to the site plan yet.
We have not.
Right.
Hi, this is Gerard Marcus. I'm the petitioner for this project. How's everyone tonight? I get the concern of the drive-through, and I can appreciate the concern. I do a lot of these types of developments of drive-throughs, and I have a partner who's a business partner who's handicapped, and I'll give you an example. Before he became my partner, he worked as an engineer, and he would get 1 hour for lunch. He would have to drive his van with his wheelchair, take it to the back. It would take him 20 minutes to unload to go into a restaurant, and he'd have literally 15 minutes to eat and get back in his car and get back to work. So the drive-through isn't just for convenience. The drive-through just isn't because we want it. It does serve a real purpose. There are a lot of people who really need to get drive-throughs. Another example I'll give you is my wife. She has 4 children, all under the age of 10. My oldest is 10, my youngest is 4. When they were younger in baby seats, my wife did not have the luxury of taking all 4 kids inside of a restaurant to feed them and, you know, screaming and hollering all the way through. So when she would go through a drive-through, she could pick up her food, she could pick up for the kids and go. I get the concern that, you know, this is not for sustainability, but I came back to the Planning Commission. I said, let me try to alleviate this concern. Let me put solar panels on top of the Panera to offset the idling cars, you know, which most cars now have, you know, thankfully auto off and auto on. But let me do everything I can to alleviate that concern with what needs to happen with idling cars. And that's why I proposed the solar panels on the Panera. But there is, especially in today's climate, a need for drive-thrus. A lot of these restaurants survive on drive-thrus. From the Starbucks to the Paneras of the world, if it wasn't for these drive-thrus, they would not be in business today. And, you know, you'd be sitting on a lot of empty buildings if not for drive-thrus in these places. So I get the concern. I appreciate the concern, but there are good reasons to have drive-thrus. And if there's any reason to have it, is right in that area off the highway. And I also understand the concern that it makes with traffic. We didn't, you know, we were very careful to propose this with the city and your staff and your engineering staff and your traffic analysts to make sure that this can fit. And it does fit. And I think their numbers, you know, say that it fits. So that's the science. We understand we all have emotions as to what we see every day, but the science is in the reports and in the studies. The last thing I'll leave you with is I propose that if you want to put a traffic light there, I'd be more than happy to pay my fair share of costs. I know Plum Market said they pay it, and I said, well, Plum Market, if you'll pay it, I'll pay it. I'll pay a third, you pay a third, and maybe you can get the city to put into a third. But I've been over backwards to say, how can I alleviate the situation? I'm still ready and willing to study, you know, a smart light system or some type of light system at the intersection, and I'll put my money where my mouth is and, you know, help pay for a light somehow, some way, in some fashion. But when I proposed that to your staff, it's let me take that up with the traffic engineer. The traffic engineer said, no way, we're not putting a light. The study supports what you're trying to do. So I have tried everything I can to alleviate the concern. I hope you consider all the other, you know, reasons that I think it's important to have a drive-through when considering this application. Thank you.
Further discussion on council? Councilor Lum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we're on the zoning, we're not at the site plan, but because Mr. Marcus is here, should we ask questions of Mr. Marcus now or wait until the site plan?
I guess, you know, he's here. I'm sure he'll stay. Mr. Marcus, can you please mute your phone?
Sure. What do I press? I'm sorry.
Perhaps we'll take it on, staff will do that, and I'll try to keep an eye out on for you for your raised hand as appropriate. I guess let's just roll with the zoning, and then we'll go to the site plan after that.
And I'm going to ask, I have then a site plan question or two to follow on to what Mr. Marcus just had to say.
Perfect. Further discussion of the zoning? Councilor Lum, your hand is up. Am I going to lower your hand for this purpose?
Yeah, it's a site plan question. Right, lower it.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please, on the zoning, starting with Councilmember Smith.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Romlawi?
Yes.
Councilmember Hayner?
Yes.
Councilmember Bannister?
Yes.
Councilmember Griswold?
Yes.
Councilmember Long?
Yes.
Councilmember Grand?
Yes.
Councilmember Ackerman?
Yes.
Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
Councilmember Eaton?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
DB1, resolution to approve MMG Plymouth Road mixed-use plan project site plan and development agreement 3611 through 3621 Plymouth Road. Moved by Councilmember Romlawi, second by Councilmember Lum. Discussion, please, of DB1, Councilmember Lum.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So Mr. Marcus, this is for you. I would like to follow on to what you just stated about your interest and willingness and I guess, for Ms. DeLeo or Mr. Liu, it would be, I guess, because this relates to traffic, your proposal or offer and to look at installing a light at the Plymouth Road access egress to this site. I was not aware that you had proposed that. What I had been asking in a series of questions since July on and off is whether or not you would consider a right, no left, design a right in, right out access egress from Plymouth Road, and to address some of the safety concerns that have been brought to our attention. And initially, in response, we were told, or I was told that that the petitioner didn't think it was necessary. That would be you, Mr. Marcus, and that so the city didn't push on this, and that you responded by saying that basically they can use Green Road during peak times. Now I'm hearing you tonight say that you had offered or suggested that that a traffic light, which would certainly be more, obviously more expensive if you're going to help, pay for this. That you would, in fact, that you had offered to contribute to, and at Plum Market as well, to install a traffic light at the Plymouth Road access egress. So could you please, and I guess Mr. Liu, yeah, again, this is new news to me. I didn't know that that was offered and that staff had analyzed that.
Yes. So I was posed that question by your staff as to, can we do a right in, right out of the service road onto Plymouth? And I responded back that that road is owned by 4 different property owners. I own a quarter, Plum Market owns a quarter, CVS owns a quarter, and I think it's the Reinhardt building that owns a quarter of this. So I said, I cannot sua sponte put a right in, right out without the acquiescence of all the other landowners. What I did ask is I called Plum Market when that question was posed to me, what do you think about right in, right out? And they said, absolutely not. That would decimate our business. We cannot agree to a right in, right out. That would be a taking from us. We would agree to, chip into a light. The light situation, when I was told, would there be any conditions that you would, provide for rezoning? And I offered, yes, I'd offer the affordable housing, and I $75,000 amount, and I offered some uses that we would disallow.
Yeah.
And I also, at that same time, offered, I would be willing to put a light in. If your city thinks there is a light, I would be more than happy to contribute my fair share. And by the way, Plum Market would also join in to pay to benefit everybody, and we just eat the cost. So I did provide that. I said, if the city thinks that a light would work, let's do it. It would benefit everybody. It can't hurt by putting a light there. City staff came back to me and said, we looked at that request. We don't think a light would work based on the traffic engineer. And I'll let your staff to speak to what their findings were with a light. I didn't know if they thought it was too close to the interchange, or they said it wasn't warranted or something like that. I don't know the exact answer, but they told me, no, a light is not going to work there. You can go with your proposals that you provided, which is the housing fund and the restrictions. So the light situation came up more than, I think, after your first reading, when it barely passed, and that's when we came back with conditions. So I always provided some type of relief, and I was steered in a different direction as to what the light is. But in terms of changing that driveway, I cannot do it. I cannot legally do it. I don't have the authority to do it. I cannot force the other 3 landowners to agree to a right in, right out as much as I would like to.
Right, you can all talk to each other, but Mr. Liu?
Well, I did talk to Plum. Plum said it's never going to happen while they're in business. So I know I can't get one person to do it. And, if I can't get one person, I don't know how I'm going to get anybody else.
Mr. Liu, could you speak to the light?
Sure. Good evening, Luke Liu here, one of the transportation engineers with city staff. That discussion did happen fairly early in the process. From a very high level evaluation, the location of this driveway access is about 100 foot away from the next intersection that's for southbound 23 on-ramp and 200 feet away from the existing traffic light at the southbound freeway off-ramp intersection. So typically, we do not install traffic signal this close to each other. I guess together with any proposal of considering such a solution, there would be more definition as to what problem we're solving and what's the logic trying to mitigate the concern. So apparently installing a traffic light will probably draw more traffic to this access off Plymouth Road than without.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Further discussion of the main motion? Councilor Lum?
Thanks. Yeah, to the site plan. So as I indicated in my comments for the rezoning, there's several positive aspects to the site plan. And overall, I think it does absolutely represent an improvement to the site. I would be excited to support the site plan if the one key traffic safety issue that we've been talking about had been addressed. Unfortunately, in my view, it's not been. That issue is what I had mentioned earlier. Again, it's the access egress from the property from and to Plymouth Road. I've heard from a number of residents about this issue, that folks coming from Plum Market and this property trying to turn left or east onto Plymouth is a very dangerous situation now that will only get worse with the added traffic from this development. And I'll just share anecdotally, this is where I always had my pre-COVID Ward 2 coffees every week, every morning. And from time to time, I heard crashes out on Plymouth Road. I haven't asked for any crash data, but yeah, there are genuine safety issues in this area, and you know what the traffic volumes are. They're significant. Again, I drive this area a lot. I share the concerns and observations of the many residents that it is a safety risk. I've tried to get it changed. I copied you council members on my communications about this, but unfortunately, as you can see, to no avail. I've asked a number of questions about this and learned this isn't just an anecdotal safety concern of a few residents. Again, I'll remind us all that city staff also recognized the problem. Staff indicated that in a response to a question, quote, "There is enough traffic volume generated to allow additional controls, but not enough to require them," end quote. Recognizing the problem, staff suggested the developer consider a right-in, right-out design from and to Plymouth Road, which seems certainly like a reasonable, logical mitigating action, but the developer refused.
I didn't confuse it. I can't do it.
Right, we heard you on weigh in on this.
Okay.
So recognizing the problem, and I think we could all collaborate here and work with our partners, the other tenants, but staff suggested that staff did then change their mind and accepted the developer's plan to do nothing, and the developer's rationale that egress traffic will likely use the Green Road access, will likely. So rather than a simple engineering solution, we'll rely on drivers to make the call. I'm sorry, I just really find that problematic. I think there's something wrong in our process when we defer to developers on decisions like this, when they are requesting site plan approval and requesting a change in zoning. If we're powerless to ensure the safety of the right-of-way in situations like this, I'm not sure what value add we have beyond just processing developers' requests and paperwork. Anyway, as tonight's meeting approached, I tried to see what recourse council might have as a follow-on to the responses to the questions from last week, and then I asked for some guidance on Friday. Not surprisingly, to me anyway, the response I got late this afternoon was that we could basically do nothing about it. I cannot tell you how frustrating this is. Apparently nobody at City Hall, not city staff, not city council, has any power authority to insist on a traffic action as simple as right in, right out, only at a highly congested traffic flashpoint. That may be the way it is, but if so, I think there's something wrong. want to support the site plan, and I likely still will. The project does improve the site, but honestly, our inability to insist on, or at least push back some, I think we got to try harder for a very simple safety mitigation action. Takes away much of the enthusiasm I had for this project. I mean, when a petitioner proposes a less preferred, from in this example again, from a safety recommendation standpoint, but acceptable response, because again, in this example, egress traffic is expected likely to use the green road access, but design modifications will not ensure that that will happen. That's not, I don't think that's good enough. I mean, I think we should push harder, try harder. Anyway, thanks for listening.
Councilmember Lorie.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I appreciate all the work that's gone into this and the conversations that we have had. But unfortunately, it hasn't materialized in anything that mitigates the traffic concerns. And I keep going back to this drive-through restaurant that I believe the arguments made for it don't compel me to put aside the other safety concerns that I have with the increased volume of cars coming and going just to grab lunch and grab dinner. I just think it's, in this case, I can't support a drive-through restaurant in an area that has these traffic concerns and safety concerns. It flies in the face of our sustainability goals, and it compounds the traffic issues. And I don't think it's something that is necessary to make this project economically viable. I think this project is wonderful without it, and not so much with it. And this project can be built and be it can be economically viable without a drive-through. I just don't see the need for a drive-through here. I can't support the site plan that includes one.
Mr. Councilman, can I respond to
Marcus,
that?
Mr. Marcus,
I'm
that's
sorry.
not how it works, I'm afraid.
So, I mean, we can move to postpone this, and the petitioner can work with staff to address this, but that's the choice of council if someone else wants to do that, but I can't support it with a drive-through.
Councilor Griswold?
Yes, I've been looking at the Google Maps here, and I think that if someone were to submit a site plan for the total area, CVS, Plum Market, Red Roof, and the drive-through, it would have a single driveway coming off Plymouth Road instead of the two. And I'm also concerned about all of the traffic that's coming from the south side of Plymouth Road, and it's not coordinated. So I see this project as an opportunity to try to improve the internal traffic flow. And while this sounds really radical, if you closed off the driveway going into Plum Market and had a single driveway further down by CVS, that might qualify for a traffic signal. The other thing is, I've been to Plum Market many times to the coffee shop there, and 50+% of the people drive in, get their coffee, and then go on to work. So even if we say right turn only, there's going to be a lot of violations of that right turn, because if you're on your way to work, you are not going to go out on Green Road and go all the way around. That's going to add at least 5 more minutes to your commute. So I just don't think that's practical. So I would also support a postponement. Let's look at a plan that includes all of the businesses there and that creates something that's safe. Thank you.
Councilmember Ackerman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. DeLeo, I saw you raise your hand. Was there something that you wanted to add?
I just wanted to clarify a point of process procedure. In all zoning districts, including the C3, the drive-through facility is a special exception use. And so anticipating the rezoning to C3, the petition submitted was for rezoning a site plan and a special exception use petition, which has been approved by the Planning Commission. So I just wanted to make that aware of that procedural process. The drive-through facility has been approved by the Planning Commission. Planning Commission only made a recommendation on the site plan and the zoning, but they did approve the drive-through petition.
That's all I had for now. Just saw Ms. DeLeo eager to add to the conversation.
Councilor Eaton?
Thank you. I would move to postpone this to the second meeting in September to give staff some time to work with the developer to try to address the traffic concerns that have been raised this evening.
Is there a second? Second by Councilor Lowie. Discussion of postponement. I've got Smith and Ackerman. Councilor Smith?
You know, I think while all of us would love to have that entire group of properties work together, you know, we can't force that, unfortunately. You know, when somebody has an approved site plan, as Plum Market does, or as CVS does, or as the Reinhardt building does, we can't go back and tell them, you know, they have to change that. That's going to get us into legal jeopardy and be a considerable risk. Well, I appreciate the concerns about much of this. I think a postponement isn't going to change that simple fact that these other actors in this do not have to cooperate with this and do not have to do anything. And indeed, one of them has indicated that if the right turn only mechanism is deployed, they will be be taking legal action. So I'm not going to support this. It's not a perfect thing, but it does site plan, but it does meet our requirements. And you know, I think when we have that, we have to, you know, assign fault to our own ordinance and policies rather than, you know, blame the people that are simply trying to follow them to do a project. So that's where I stand on that. Thanks.
Councilmember Ackerman.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for staff. Could this be accomplished by the first meeting in September, or is a full month needed?
Ultimately, I guess it depends on what direction council would like us to pursue. I agree with the comments that we cannot mandate action on other properties. So if that's the sort of thing that we can ask, and I couldn't answer how long that process would take for the petitioner to have those conversations. Maybe they could be quick, maybe they would take a while. I can't have the answer to that.
Yeah. Can I ask Mr. Marcus the same question, but if we unmute you, Mr. Marcus, I'll just ask that you be brief.
He should be able to speak now.
Hi, when this question was posed to me over the weekend or late last week, I immediately called Plum Market and asked them what their thought was, and they would not agree to it. So I know I already have one group who's not going to agree to it, and I can understand why they won't agree to it. I have no idea how to get CVS to agree to something like this. And even if I did get them to agree to this, and if I got the other building agree to this, I have one other major player in this that will not agree to it. So I don't know how to, you know, go about this task that you ask of me. It's an impossible task.
Thank you. Yeah, that answers my question. Thank you, Mr. Marcus. I'm supporting the postponement. I thought perhaps 2 weeks would be sufficient. And this is a petitioner who's been really diligent in trying to work with us, and you know, has offered a voluntary contribution of $75,000 to the Affordable Housing Fund, has volunteered conditions that will state that this property can never be developed for some you know, unfavorable types of uses for the surrounding area. You know, has gone through our lengthy review process. But I think a month or 2 weeks, this is a, kind of a fool's errand that we're asking him to pursue. So, it doesn't make a difference on the length. I think we're asking an impossible task. So I think it's time to vote.
Councilmember Lum. Pardon me, Councilmember Lum on the postponement.
Thank you. Right, on the postponement, I concur with what Councilmember Smith and Ackerman said. We're looking at the site plan for this property of this larger tax parcel, or this specific tax parcel within this larger site with multiple tenants, but we can't require anything of the Plum Market CVS. Reinhardt is actually outside the tax parcel entirely, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. But so these adjacent property owners for whom customers use these private drives that lead to Green Road and Plymouth Road, they all need to put their heads together and agree that you got a less than ideal situation here, and it would help to address the safety concerns that, again, I say staff noted this early on in this whole process. And early on, the petitioner, I'm reading staff's response, responded additional trips weren't necessary given the distribution, staff concurred, on and on. And that the property owner, Mr. Marcus, can't make commitments on behalf of the others. So I'm not sure what we can accomplish, quite honestly, with a postponement. We also got a legal opinion on this, and I was set to make an amendment to the development agreement or the resolution itself to require that this be addressed, but we are limited as to what we can require, frankly, unfortunately.
Councilor Griswold on the postponement.
I'm going to support the postponement, and I don't think the responsibility is just with the petitioner. I would like to see staff take the lead, and there may be some benefits that we can offer the other property owners here, working on a better traffic flow internally and coming out onto Green Road and Plymouth Road. I live quite close to this. I'm very familiar with it. And none of it feels comfortable whether you're walking, riding a bike, or driving in a car. It just all seems illogical. And I think that it would be it would be a simple task to look at it and try to improve the flow comprehensively, looking at all of these properties. And that might include reducing one of the driveways, eliminating one, widening another one. But let's be creative and see what we can do in a few weeks. Thank you.
Further discussion? Roll call vote, please, on the postponement.
Councilmember Smith?
No.
Councilmember Rumlawi?
Yes.
Councilmember Hayner?
No.
Councilmember Bannister?
Yes.
Councilmember Griswold?
Yes.
Councilmember Lum?
Yes.
Councilmember Grand?
No.
Councilmember Ackerman?
No.
Mayor Taylor?
No.
Councilmember Eaton?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson? No. Motion fails.
Further discussion on the main motion? Councilmember Rumlawi.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a question again on the technical aspects of this that DeLeo referred to earlier. If you can, again, remind me, that decision's already been made for council with the special exception by Planning Commission. In this case, it doesn't matter how that issue's been decided. Is that correct?
The issue of the special exception use for the drive-through, that particular accessory use requires special exception use, and it's all special exception uses are approved by Planning Commission per state law. Now, so I would say that if you were to table it so that they could, or postpone it so they could talk about the drive-through, should it be there, should it not be there, that is not within the purview. That one aspect is not within the purview of council. You can table it for almost any other reason, or vote for almost any other reason on the matter on the table. But if you had mentioned at one point, maybe we can go back and reevaluate the drive-through facility, and that facility question has been addressed through the special exception use process. But all other aspects are under the purview of council.
Further discussion? Mr. Marcus, I see that you're trying to speak. Is there something you have information for us before we vote?
No, I apologize. I did not know I was had my hand raised.
No worries. Roll call vote, please. Starting with Councilmember Smith.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Mlawi,
Yes.
Councilmember Hayner,
Yes.
Councilmember Bannister,
Yes.
Councilmember Griswold,
Yes.
Councilmember Lum,
Yes.
Councilmember Grand,
Yes.
Councilmember Ackerman,
Yes.
Mayor Taylor,
Yes.
Councilmember Eaton,
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
motion carries.
Let's take a short break. It's 9:37. We'll reconvene at 9:50.
a short break. Where are we? There we are. B2, an ordinance to amend Chapter 55 Unified Development Code zoning of 4.5 acres from R5 Hotel District to C3 Fringe Commercial District, 2800 Jackson Road Hotels, 2800 Jackson Road. Moved by Councilmember Amlawi, seconded by Councilmember Nelson. Discussion, please, of B2.
Well,
Councilmember Lum. Councilor Lum, you were first in the queue. You're on mute, council member.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. My comments here will cover both the rezoning, so this item B2 and the site plan DB2. I will be supporting both. This 4.5 acre property is adjacent to the Jackson Avenue on ramp to I-94. It was formerly a hotel and it's now vacant. The proposal is to construct 2 hotel buildings totaling 235 rooms, and I believe that's an appropriate use of the property. The master plan does call for commercial. Initially, I was confused and a bit concerned about the proposed zoning. Two hotels are proposed, yet we're changing zoning from the hotel district, which is R5, and that's what it is now. And as it turns out, the R5 zoning has not been used for hotels since 1985. And for the last 7 hotels since 2015, 4 have been C3, and the other 3 have been PUD, office, and C2B. So learning that, I am comfortable with changing to the C3 zoning for this property. C3 permits slightly more rooms, 235 versus 216, and a slightly taller building, 55 feet versus 50 feet, than R5 would have permitted. But those are not significant variances and are not inappropriate for this location. In this proposal, like the Plymouth Road proposal, there were concerns expressed regarding the traffic impact of vehicles entering and exiting the site. Unlike Plymouth Road, however, this developer adjusted the original plan to allow right turns only to enter and exit the site to mitigate the issue. Some other positive aspects of the proposal are that stormwater management will be improved through rain gardens and underground storage, and the developer will be constructing sidewalks for neighboring property. So I do not see any issues with this proposal, and will be supporting both the rezoning to C3, B2, and the site plan DB2 tonight. Thank you.
Councilor Keener.
I thought it was curious that we haven't had an R5 since 1985. And I just wonder why that is, if it's just an outmoded, is it a remnant left there on our books, or is there a specific reason why? I mean, any assumptions why we haven't had a hotel come in under a hotel zoning in the last 40 some years? I'm just curious about that. I mean, I'm perfectly fine with this being C3 and the dimensions and everything. It's a long neglected spot. But I too was struck by how odd it was that we haven't had a hotel under or what is considered our hotel zoning for some 40 years. That's all.
Further discussion of the main motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It's approved. DB2, resolution to approve 2800 Jackson Road Hotel Site Plan and Development Agreement, 2800 Jackson Road, moved by Councilmember Amlawi, seconded by Councilmember Smith. Discussion, please, of DB2. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It is approved. DC1, resolution to endorse HB 4738 and the creation of a statewide crosswalk law, moved by Councilmember Griswold, seconded by Councilmember Hayner. Discussion, please, of DC1. Councilmember Griswold.
A similar resolution was actually introduced in June 19th of 2019. I'm a bit taken aback and stressed out by this because there is tremendous emotion in this community regarding an engineering decision. It's been tabled, it's been postponed, and my intent is to have an engineer evaluate our pedestrian and cycling environment. That process has been going on since January of 2019, the same month that we had the critical pedestrian injury. We were going to hire someone. That didn't happen. Then we were going to hire a consultant from Sam Schwartz. That's been delayed numerous times. At this point, I would simply like to table the resolution. For the record, I'd like to state that the Transportation Commission does not support this House bill. And I have explained to the Transportation Commission that this is the language that the Michigan Department of Transportation is willing to support going to committee, and the place to negotiate language changes is in committee. And unless we get a bill to committee, that process will not take place. If we don't participate, then we will end up with a state law that does not have the input of Ann Arbor citizens. But I would prefer at this point to simply postpone this until we can get a professional engineer with Vision Zero expertise to come in. And I would ask Tom Crawford if he has a date on when that might happen.
I do not. I'm having conversations with staff about that right now. I don't have a date for you, but I should by, I'll let you know this week.
Oh, okay, because it has been promised and delayed, and I realize that there is delays because of COVID. I'm embarrassed that we have to keep delaying this, but if anyone has another alternative, I'd be open to it.
Councilor, you're indicating a desire to either postpone or table. It sounds more like a table than a postponement. Is that all right? Is that, do I understand you correctly?
Yes, I will move to table this for the second time in a year.
Is there a second on that? Is there a second by Councilman?
I want to ask the movement, do you understand that a tabling is different than a postponement?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll second that.
Roll call vote, please, on the tabling, starting with Councilor Smith. I'm sorry, I believe formally there's no discussion with respect to a tabling. Am I correct in that? Thank you. Roll call vote, please, start with Councilor Smith.
Councilor Smith?
No.
Councilor Romlawi?
Yes.
Councilor Hayner?
Yes.
Councilor Bannister?
Yes.
Councilor Griswold?
Yes.
Councilor Lum?
Yes.
Councilor Grand?
Yeah.
Councilor Ackerman?
Yes.
Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
Councilor Eaton?
Yes.
Councilor Nelson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
DC 2, resolution to approve the acquisition and renovation of Lorie Terrace by the Ann Arbor Affordable Housing Corporation, an affiliated nonprofit entity of the Ann Arbor Housing Commission. Approve 5 FTEs and appropriate funds in the amount of $260,000. Moved by Councilmember Ackerman and seconded by Councilmember Hayner. Discussion, please, of DC 2. I guess I'd like to just take it from the jump here. I'm incredibly excited by this opportunity. We all know that Lorie Terrace is the home of a large number of seniors, 62 and older, in about 136 apartments. We also know that it is absolutely necessary that we provide and ensure the stability of affordable housing for that population. With its action today, assuming that this passes, and I hope and expect that it will, the council will, the city will be taking an important step to providing that long-term security. I am glad of the opportunity. I'm grateful to the board for working with us. And I think this is a win for everyone. And I am just glad that the day is here. Councilman Ackerman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to the staff for getting us here. So a special thanks to Mr. Crawford, to Mr. Markley, to Mr. McDonald, to Ms. Hall, Ms. Pauley. This is an incredible opportunity. In the 1960s, the federal government made a promise to our community that seniors in need would have access to these housing units. And over the years, those commitments and promises have fallen away from and lost their legal framework. But we've been really blessed as a community to have an awesome nonprofit board who's kept that spirit alive and worked diligently to keep low-income seniors in their homes and cultivate a really wonderful community at Lorie Terrace. I think as a city, we now have an opportunity to carry on that same promise that the federal government made 80 some years ago and dedicate these 130 units in perpetuity to meet the needs of seniors. The Census Bureau and the Southeastern Michigan Council of Governments all project that our senior population will double over the next decades. And not all seniors are going to have fixed incomes that will allow them to stay in our community, despite the fact that they've spent their lives paying taxes in this community. And this is guaranteeing that over the course of the next generations, hundreds, if not thousands of different seniors will get to keep calling Ann Arbor home. So all of this is also made possible by important funding mechanisms, hundreds of thousands of dollars coming from the public safety and mental health millage and its rebate back to the city, important funding coming from the DDA and the Ann Arbor Housing Commission, reworking their budgets to make sure that we can take care of this, really once in a generation opportunity. So super excited. And if I could, I'd love to add my name as a co-sponsor.
Councilor Lum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll confess I was a bit skeptical about the city's purchasing Lorie Terrace initially, but I'm now comfortable and I will be supporting this tonight. I've grown comfortable in large part because Jennifer Hall and Tom Crawford have done an outstanding job managing the process throughout. They've been very professional, extremely thorough, and have provided all the information council has requested and needed at every step in the process. And there have not been any surprises along the way. This is a significant transaction in several respects. Councilmember Ackerman touched on some of them. The purchase price is $4 million, which in itself is significant, but more importantly, with this purchase through the Ann Arbor Housing Commission and its subsidiary, the Ann Arbor Affordable Housing Corporation, the city will be preserving a very important affordable housing asset in Ann Arbor. Lorie Terrace has 136 units of affordable housing that's now dedicated to seniors. As part of the acquisition, the Ann Arbor Affordable Housing Corporation will execute a deed restriction that limits age to 62 and older and limits income of new tenants to 40% of tenants at 60% AMI or less and 60% at 80% AMI or less. Although there are a few existing tenants whose incomes exceed those levels, they will be grandfathered in, and that's certainly appropriate. In terms of the financials, $5.3 million is needed up front to fund the purchase price and the necessary reserves. Most of that, about $4 million, will be a HUD insured loan, and $1 million will be a grant from the DDA. The balance, about $320,000, is the direct city contribution, and that will come from the fiscal year 21 Housing Commission budget of $940,000. On an ongoing operating basis, no direct city financial support is projected to be necessary. To be honest, I initially thought that for both the upfront acquisition costs and the ongoing costs, the city's necessary financial contributions would be much more substantial. So these financial projections are very encouraging. Again, my thanks to Ms. Hall and Mr. Crawford for their leadership in making this happen. And thanks as well to the DDA for the major financial support. This has been in the works for a while, almost a year now. And I'm pleased to support this tonight and to preserve this valuable, affordable housing asset for our seniors. And thank you for listening.
Councilmember Grant.
Thank you. I'll look forward to our Housing Commission meeting on Wednesday where we can finalize this on the board's end as well. I think there's been a lot that's been said about the heavy lifting that's been done by a number of staff to make this happen. And really the only thing I have to add is that when we are looking to add affordable units, we also need to be thinking about not losing existing affordable units in our community. And I think this creates a model as we have other properties in the community that may be going through a, not an exact transition because this had a nonprofit board as Councilmember Ackerman mentioned, but as we look at properties that are coming off a 15-year or a 30-year agreement where they could go market rate, this really presented an opportunity on a per unit basis that was frankly just a tremendous deal to our community. And when you factor in all of the work that staff did to leverage funds, it's phenomenal work. So thank you again to all the staff that worked on this project. And I hope that when we talk about housing affordability, we're not just thinking about building new, which of course we want to do, but what other kinds of creative solutions may be right in front of our noses.
Councilor Smith.
You know, every once in a while, project comes along that you feel really good about being a part of. I think that this is one of the biggest no-brainers we've had before us in my nearly 5 years on council. I'm thrilled that we have gotten to this point in our negotiations. Everybody has worked so hard. Everybody has been so creative in trying to figure out how to get this done. We still have some considerable work to do, but I'm really optimistic that we are almost over the finish line with this one. And I'm more importantly, I'm thrilled for the residents of Lorie Terrace, and you know, many of whom reach out directly to Councilmember Rumlawi and I as we represent them. Many have been very anxious and nervous over this whole process, and indeed over the last couple of years. I think that this can finally help, you know, relieve some of that tension and relieve some of that anxiety. And I am confident that this is a huge win for our community and for the residents of Lorie Terrace. Thank you.
Councilmember Hayner.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it's, you know, buying a used building has its concerns, just like buying a used car, I suppose. But I think I recall some of our closed session conversations, and any way we slice this, it was a good deal for the city. I mean, we're basically talking about getting units for $40,000 each built, ready to go. That's unheard of, right? So, you know, we're building new one-bedroom costs. I think Ms. Hall said it previously that, you know, we might be going 200, 225 for a one-bedroom and new construction. I mean, this doesn't even come close. It's a decent building. I'm glad we're putting some money into it up front to take care of some of the concerns. Some of this near $6 million is going towards that to you know, assure that the property's gonna be with us for a while. And I'm just super delighted to be supporting this. I appreciate everyone's hard work on this, and I mean, you don't find apartments for $40,000 anymore. So it's just an amazing deal, and thanks to the nonprofit board for you know, working with us to help put this together. And as others have said, I encourage others in the community to do the same thing. At the very least, we can take a look at it and see if it's something we can swing. And again, this notion that we want to preserve what we have as well as build new, I think is pretty legit. And I've said it before, I'll suggest again that we need to keep a running tally of what we have and what exists in our community now and what changes, what comes and what goes and so on, so we can see that our trends are in the right direction, in the direction of our goals, and that we're headed in the right way with our goals. And this is definitely the right direction for that trend. So thanks for everybody's hard work and can't wait to own it.
Councilmember Rumlowy.
Thank you, Mayor. And apologize. But yeah, I've been waiting anxiously, like many of my colleagues, to share this news with our community. It's been, like Councilmember Lum said, about a year in the making. I remember when Mr. Crawford approached me almost a year ago about the prospects of purchasing this property, and I nearly jumped out of my shoes. I said, absolutely. This is definitely worth looking into and trying to acquire. Obviously it takes more than one person or one body. It took many different parts of our community to come together and make this happen. And so I like to thank, the board members of Lorie Terrace of working with the city, the DDA, and the generosity that they're showing and the commitment to affordable housing. Jennifer Hall, this body, Mr. Crawford. This is a really feel-good story that you join council and you want to achieve these kind of achievements. This is something that doesn't happen too often because it does take a lot of things to line up. And like my colleague said, Councilmember Smith, many residents have reached out to us and are just thrilled and relieved that they're able to stay where they live, and that they got an agency like the Ann Arbor Housing Commission who can come in with the expertise and the resources they have to continue to maintain where they live. So I don't want to just repeat everything all my colleagues said, but it is a very huge achievement and big news and positive news. And I would like to be added as a co-sponsor if I could. And I just thank everyone who had a hand in this.
Councilmember Griswold.
I'd like to be listed as a co-sponsor and acknowledge all of the positive comments that have been made to date. As a Kiwanis volunteer, I became friends with some of the people that lived at Lorie Terrace, and so I'm thrilled that they're not going to have to move, and they were really sweet people, and so it just makes me really happy to know that they have a place, as well as all of the positive things in terms of adding affordable housing units. Thank you.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. I would like to be added as a co-sponsor as well. I think it's important to acknowledge again that this really was a very long journey from the very first conversation to where we are now, and how many people had to work so hard to make this work, because the beginning conversations, it looked like this was going to be a pretty steep hill to climb. And it's a testament to the expertise of our staff that this deal was able to be put together, because it's a significant property, a very valuable property. And as a public interest, the value of that property is in providing housing for the people who can't afford the high rents that typically are demanded in market rate housing developments. So yeah, just congratulations to everybody who worked so hard on this. Thanks.
Councilmember Bannister.
I'd like to thank everyone who worked on this too, and I'd like to ask to be added as a co-sponsor. I know I visited some people there 30 years ago with my grandma, and she couldn't get in, but it was a great place back then also. So as Councilmember Grand mentioned, I think there are other opportunities like this around town, and so I think we should look for more successes like this with the already built housing. And thanks everyone for all your work on this, including Tom Crawford.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It is approved that 11 council members present, all voting the affirmative, thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement. Well done. DC3, resolution to approve outdoor seating for Drip Coffee House, 1336 South Main Street for the rest of the season as a special event sale. Moved by Councilmember Nelson, seconded by Councilmember Eaton. Discussion, please, of DC3. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Approved. DC4, resolution to amend Resolution R20194, resolution to approve downtown street closures for restaurant and retail use during the time of mandated physical distancing, and Resolution R20302, resolution to extend Resolution R20194, resolution to approve downtown street closures for restaurant and retail use during the time of mandated physical distancing to extend Sunday closure hours. Moved by Councilmember Ramlawi, seconded by Councilmember Lum. Discussion, please, of DC4. Councilmember Lum.
I believe these were intended to be deleted. Because the administrator has the authority to do this.
All right.
Mr. Crawford, jump in here, please. They were deleted.
All right. Can we take it as a scrivener's error that this was not deleted from the agenda? Is that consistent with?
Mayor, I'm not sure where Mr. Crawford is. He had asked us to delete it, and then there was some confusion as to whether the sponsors had agreed to that, and so we left it on the agenda.
Yeah, so sorry about the confusion. We agreed. Councilmember Ramlawi and I agreed. Yeah, and we appreciate this. This was generated after our last week's Thursday's meeting with the Merchant Association reps. And then I should let Mr. Crawford speak to this. He discovered
I was
that.
just going to say I've confirmed it can be pulled, Mayor, with both the sponsors and legal.
Right.
All right. All right. Well, let's. Is it with council's Mr. Councilmember Hayner?
I just want to make sure, so this is being pulled because we're going to go through with these
Yes.
positive notions on behalf of the merchants and so on. Okay, just want to make sure.
Yes, we extended the Sunday time from 8 p.m. to 11:59.
Okay, but I think that's going to be appreciated. I know. I mean, we'll see how it goes, but I think from everything we've been hearing, it's been a decent trial and has helped folks out. So that's important.
All right, so we'll deem its inclusion on the agenda to have been a scrivener's error, and we will not require, unless anyone has a concern, will not require a reopening of the agenda and a removal or what have you. Excellent. Do we have communications today from our city attorney?
We do, Mayor.
We have before us the clerk's report of communications, petitions, and referrals. May I have a motion, please, to approve the clerk's report? Moved by Councilmember Lum, second by Councilmember Smith. Discussion of the clerk's report. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The clerk's report is approved. We now come to public comment general time. Public comment general time is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council and the community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at public comment general time, one need not have signed up in advance. To speak at public comment general time, please dial the number on your screen, that being 877-853-5247. That is 877-853-5247. Once you're connected, please dial the meeting ID 962-3652-2322. That is 962-3652-2322. At that time, once you have joined us and dialed the meeting ID, please enter *9. That is *9 to raise your hand and indicate that you wish to be called upon. You will be called upon in order by identification of the last 3 digits of your phone number. The last 3 digits of your phone number. Speakers have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time. Our clerk will notify you when 30 seconds are left and when your 3 minutes are up. When your 3 minutes are up, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor to the next speaker. Is there anyone who'd like to speak at public comment?
Mayor, we have one caller on the line. Do you want me to check on them?
Yes, please. Caller 888, if you wish to speak, please dial *9 now.
Looks like they might have hung up.
Is there anyone who'd like to speak at public comment?
Mayor, there are no other callers on the line.
Seeing no one, public comment is closed. Are there communications today from council? Councilmember Hayner, was that the hand from before?
No, I have a brief statement.
Please.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to, a couple things. I just wanted to point out in the election commission minutes from July, there was a list of all the folks who are going to be doing the poll watching, poll monitoring, and helping out with everything in the election coming up in November and August and November. And I saw that, and I assume this is the nature of the state requirements on this, that there were folks who had a G in front of their name for the Green Party, and there were folks who had an L in front of their name, which I assume is Libertarian. And then if GASP, there were also R's on there. So we also have some Republicans here in town. And I just thought it was curious to see the mix of folks who are interested in watching those polls and helping out and volunteering and being a part of our democracy and being a part of our city laid out there in that giant chart that Jackie assembled for us to take a look at. And, it shows that there's all kinds of folks here in town, and everybody, people volunteer, people are active politically. They want to help the community out, and I appreciate that. So thank you for offering to serve during our elections.
Further discussion? Pardon me, further communications? Do we have a close? I'm sorry, Councilmember Griswold.
It appears that a caller has his hand up.
I see. With council's
I don't know if it's
acquiescence.
too
No,
late, but
no,
there are 2 new phone numbers.
with council's acquiescence, I would suggest we roll back and get these 2 callers in. Does anyone have any concerns about that? Ms. Beaudry, would you please acknowledge the callers?
Caller with the phone number ending in 760. You can go ahead and talk. If you'll unmute yourself, you can go ahead and speak. Caller 760.
Hello, this is Francis Mills. Can you hear me?
We can. Please proceed.
Excellent. Francis Mills at 5 Parkview Place. Just wanted to speak briefly related to the Lorie Terrace issue because there was no public hearing element. Just wanted to express first of all, excitement as a neighbor to Lorie Terrace that this is being acquired by the city. Couldn't imagine a better set of neighbors and a better property owner nearby. However, I just did want to put on the official public record that there are a number of capital expense concerns that don't appear to have been considered in the cost and probably well exceed the $60,000 set aside. In particular, some of the units at Lorie Terrace are served by galvanized water lines that run directly through sanitary sewer manhole to the east of the property. There's an overhead electricity service aerial trespass going to the property to the north. There's also quite a deteriorated condition of the medium voltage electricity service on the east side of the property. These things, each individually, seem like they'd be on the order of the $60,000 magnitude. And I just want to make sure that those are on the record and considered so that the overall financial position of the project can be adjusted so that it's successful and that it's not leading to a situation in which the rents and operating income fall below the level of expenses so that the financing arrangement described in the motion becomes unfeasible. I want to make sure that things get started off on the right foot as a nearby neighbor and looking forward to having a city as a neighbor for a long term in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, there's a few other callers on the line. Did you want me to check with them?
Yes, please. If callers wish to speak or on the line, please enter *9.
Caller 758. Caller 758, do you have a comment?
Good evening, members of council, Mr. Mayor and Mr. City Administrator. My name is Mark Heisel. I'm a lifelong resident of the city and current resident of the 2nd Ward, but I'm before you tonight as one of the attorneys from the law firm of Dickinson Wright here in Ann Arbor. We represent the Senior Citizens Housing of Ann Arbor, which is the nonprofit corporation more affectionately referred to as Lorie Terrace. I'm with you tonight on behalf of the Lorie Terrace Board of Directors, who wish to express their deep appreciation to the city, the Housing Commission, and the staff for working with us for months to explore and study the feasibility of this transaction between Lorie Terrace and the city through the Ann Arbor Housing Commission. As many have said tonight, this is a unique and perhaps historic opportunity for the city to inch a bit closer to its goals of supporting affordable housing in the community, and doing so with a population at most risk. As each of you know, the city and its residents have made affordable housing a priority for years, but these goals are not always easy to achieve. For as many years or more, the Lorie Terrace community has been a model of affordable housing for seniors in a private setting. Today, both the city and Lorie Terrace move closer to transitioning our mutual goals for through the stewardship of the city. Over the last several years, the current voluntary board at Lorie Terrace has been investigating ways it could assure that its mission of providing affordable housing for seniors in the community lived on indefinitely. As time has proven, doing so in a private, non-profit format, though, despite the tireless efforts by its board and staff, has proven challenging, requiring outside assistance that would eventually threaten the nonprofit's ability to continue affordable housing alternatives to the community. After considering various options, including offers from private developers, the Lorie Terrace board decided that collaborating with the city and its affordable housing initiatives gave the current residents, the future residents, and indeed the city itself the best opportunity to realize our mutual goals well into the future. The board of Lorie Terrace is excited to bring this transaction to fruition, as in a simple, single acquisition, it achieves the goals of both the city and Lorie Terrace.
30
Tonight,
seconds.
I am excited that we can applaud and celebrate what together we have achieved to provide and promote smart, affordable housing opportunities for seniors in our community. On a personal note, I'd also like to just give a shout out to Jane Lum, who's been my council member in the 2nd Ward for years. And I wanted Jane to know that the residents of the 2nd Ward appreciate all the service that she's given to the city and to the ward in particular. I look forward to Jane's continued leadership in the future and her participation throughout many different activities in the city. Thanks again very much for having the opportunity to address you tonight. And again, I applaud the council's actions in moving forward with this transaction.
Thank you.
Caller 439. Caller 439, do you have a comment? Caller 439, it looks like you're muted. Caller 760, no. Caller 439, do you have a comment?
Yes. Oh, okay. It finally worked. Apologies. Can you hear me okay?
Now we can hear you, sir.
Great. Thank you so much. Hello, council members, Mayor. This is Henry McConnell. I've spoken to you this month regarding the policy recommendation of a downtown masking mandate. I'm calling to follow up and express renewed urgency. We heard comments from the university earlier. I'd like to applaud especially Councilmember Grand, as she so eloquently and depressingly put it. Tens of thousands of students with unformed frontal lobes returning. What could go wrong? A lot can go wrong. So here's the deal. Here is the urgency I need to bring to you once again. We need a downtown masking policy. I live downtown. It is not good now. It will be even worse later if we don't get this in place. I also want to really key in to a factor that being in a community that is so wholly responsive to racial justice understands, right, that we need to do this in a way that is going to really bear in mind that use of police force could be unacceptable. So I want to once again really ask, in fact, plead for all of you to consider what it would look like if we could peacefully enforce a downtown masking policy. I don't think this is an unreasonable request. I also believe, based on my experience living in New York the past 5 years, which I just moved back from, where they are, for instance, using park rangers and having park rangers giving out masks for free. There are ways to do this where we do not need to resort to, writing a ticket right away if someone's not wearing a mask. We can give warnings. We can give out masks for free, and I think there's a way that we could get this done that will make the downtown area substantially safer. I certainly feel not particularly safe even without the students being there yet, because there are so many people who are blithely indifferent to wearing masks and congregate, and I have to pass them, and they're in swarms. It's really unfortunate, and I think we could do a lot better. So I am very much calling on this council, with the very minimal amount of time that remains before these students come flooding back in by the tens of thousands, to please act. I live downtown. My father lives downtown.
30 seconds.
In a building that will be flooded with students. I want you to know that blood will be on your hands if you can't do more to ensure the safety. As we've seen, the university simply is not very interested in doing themselves. So please act differently than the university, which is simply acting poorly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, there are no more callers on the line.
All right. Seeing no one else, public comment is really closed. Is there any, Councilmember Griswold, I think you are on. Let's hear it again.
Yes, and I apologize from all those caucus meetings. I just naturally keep an eye on who's raising their hand.
No, it's good.
I do have a question, and I don't mean to micromanage, but I would like staff to look into this. And some of the reports are stating that if you wear a mask with a valve, you're protecting yourself, but you're actually exhaling your breath. And so if you have COVID, you're simply spreading it. So we have some people that are wearing masks that actually are no better than people without a mask. I'm also told that people wearing these neck gaiters, they may be worse than wearing a mask because of the type of fabric that's used actually breaks up the virus particles into a finer mist. So I'm not an expert in any of this, but it would be helpful to get that information, because if we're going to have an ordinance requiring masks, we want to make sure that we're doing it right. Thank you.
Further communications from council? I gather we doubly don't have a closed session tonight. Is that correct?
That is correct. Doubly.
Excellent. I have a motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Councilmember Smith, seconded by Councilmember Umlaui. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.